snow, and cold. It's a chilling, deadly weather combination.
Go, 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 go!
These are the stories from people who work in extreme weather.
Just lost a big window.
It was just like a bomb went off.
And nobody is coming to save you.
And the storms they'll never forget.
Wham! Crack! Bang! Bang! Bang!
We're going to die.
Plus, the how and why behind the world's worst weather.
Mother Nature is one mother.
Of all the weather Mother Nature can dish out, our deadliest enemy is cold. From churning blizzards to crippling ice storms and biting frostbite, cold is a killer. And it's hitting the globe in more unpredictable ways than ever before. And it all starts here, at the top of the world, the Arctic. A land gripped permanently by ice, greater in size than India and China combined. And the source of all cold weather in the northern hemisphere. The air directly above the Arctic surface is always freezing. Above it, warmer air sinks down, pushing the colder surface air south. These polar winds gain speed as they travel south to create our wild winters.
And what we're talking about is big Arctic air masses coming down. And when they're driven southward very quickly, this can be behind a rapidly moving cold front. We can often see temperatures drop very drastically.
Fast enough to make scientists' heads spin. For those who work outside in brutal winter weather, it can be a matter of life and death. For 26 years, Michael McLean has braved some of the toughest weather imaginable, stringing communication cables 30 feet in the air.
I spent my entire life working in extreme weathers up on top of hydro poles. Weather can affect my job in many ways. It can lead to fatigue, it can lead to cold, it can lead to exhaustion, sweat, you can get dehydrated, you can get hypothermia. I mean, weather, it plays an integral part in what we do because we're outside all day. And on this day, I saw extreme weather that I will never forget. I absolutely felt I was going to freeze to death on that pole that day.
February 2005. It's early morning in Ontario, Canada. Michael receives an urgent call from work. Freezing rain and ice has downed a steel cable system on a busy highway, putting lives at risk.
It was an emergency call because the line is now down over top of the road, which is now closing the road, so it needs to be fixed.
Yeah, be out there in a couple hours, buddy. No worries. Okay, no worries.
It's a deadly disaster waiting to happen. Until the cables are removed and restrung, the icy highway with an obstacle on it has the ingredients for a deadly crash. He's forced to brave the cold to solve the problem. The second he steps outside, Michael is struck by how quickly the temperature has plummeted.
With the cold front moving in, expect bitter cold temperatures north of the city, and be sure to take necessary extreme cold precautions.
A cold front. A mass of cold, dry air has blown in from the north and fast. Depending on how fast it moves, a cold front can cause a sudden drop in temperature, as much as 50 degrees or more. Michael has worked on hundreds of emergency calls, but on the 2-hour drive north, he realizes this one's not like any of the others.
The weather reports are saying it's just hostile out, and exposure over 5 minutes could lead to frostbite. And what they're saying, due to wind chill, it's feeling more like 50 below to 70 below outside.
In addition to the fast-moving cold front, winds blowing off a nearby lake intensify the wind chill, making the weather even harsher.
Wind chill is the culmination of both the temperature and the wind. It implies what it feels like outside, and it's again this idea of the wind scouring heat from the body. The body has to work harder to maintain your core temperature.
With a wind chill of -50, people are warned to stay inside, protected from the piercing cold. But Michael has no choice.
As soon as I arrive on site, instantaneously, you can see that the road is closed. The line is literally laying on the road. So upon arriving on site, I step outside of the truck, and instantly I'm just blasted with the cold. When I left to go up to the emergency, it was about 14 below. And as I arrived on site, it was about 58 below with the wind chill factor.
In just 2 hours, the cold front has moved so fast, the temperatures have plunged by more than 40 degrees.
Temperature in this sort of extreme cold, one should never be out for longer than 5 minutes at a time. But I had to stay out to open the road. That's my job.
It's only been 2 minutes, and Michael is already losing feeling in his feet. But the job has to get done.
I'm instantly thinking, okay, this is a 2-suit job. I've got 2 one-piece snowsuits. They're rated for 25 below. So my thought is put them both on. That's a double up. And now it should be rated for 50 below. Instantly, I cut the line in the middle of the road and I pull it off the road so that we can at least have the road open. So at this point, I know I have to climb the hydro poles to make the repair.
And his experience tells him that this job will take at least 30 minutes.
Someone working on a pole, highly exposed to bitterly cold wind chills, say -50 or colder, obviously in a very, very dangerous situation. When we talk about wind chill, being exposed is allowing the wind the full force on your body, scouring heat from your body, making it more difficult for your core temperature to be maintained.
I have never experienced this type of a temperature drop, nor have I ever been forced into an environment where I had to work in that temperature.
As heat goes up, the icy temperature goes down.
The faster I move, the more I'm exposed because now I'm coming off of the ground level and now I'm just being belted with this wind. It was never going to come to an end because every second was bitter. I've climbed thousands of poles in my career, and I absolutely thought I was never getting off this pole.
Extreme cold. It's nature's deadliest element. And when it moves in fast, it's some of the most dangerous weather on the planet. It's a winter's day in Canada. A polar wind screams south, causing temperatures to drop to a bone-snapping 40 degrees in just 2 hours. To make matters worse, cold air blowing off a nearby lake creates a wind chill that makes it feel like -60 degrees Fahrenheit. In these Arctic temperatures, communications lineman Michael McLean is 30 feet up. It feels like 60 below. It's an emergency. He needs to replace a cable line.
I'm about 10 steps up the pole where I'm no longer feeling my feet, really. It's just bitter cold. It rattles your bones as you walk up with every step.
He attempts to fasten a new line to the pole, desperately hoping his drill doesn't seize up.
It feels like your lungs have like crystallized air inside them.
Exposure in this for more than 5 minutes can lead to frostbite. Michael's been on the pole for 20 minutes.
Frostbite is basically that idea of the heart working to keep the core warm at the expense of the extremities. And so as the circulation starts to cut off from fingers and toes, we're not getting the blood flow anymore, oxygen to those things. And then the concern is if that frostbite is extensive enough, we may in fact have to amputate the fingers and toes.
It's your extremities that are suffering. Your fingers are so cold that you're doing bits of jobs where you tighten one nut till it's tightened. You're doing part of the tightening, and then you're sticking your fingers inside the outer snowsuit into the armpits. And it's a damned if you do and damned if you don't. The more warmth you take for your fingers, the longer you stand on the pole. You want to keep working, but you don't want to lose your fingers in the process. All I could think about is getting back there in my truck.
Michael finally secures the line to the first pole, and guess what? He now has to do it all over again.
So after 30 minutes in the air, I get to come down into my truck and I get to warm my body. Stay there just enough to get them blood flowing back in your extremities. The daunting thing is now knowing I have to go to the other side of the street to do it all over again. I am completely fatigued at this point. I'm mentally exhausted, I'm physically exhausted, and my body's feeling the effects of the weather that's just been blistering through me. In your fingertips, you feel like there's 1,000 bees trying to sting their way out. Like as you touch them, you can feel the vibrations through your hand, through the bones. It's that cold, really. As you're pushing through and you want to quit, and I felt that moment, and I had that moment, and I'm not allowed to quit.
Oh, okay. We got this.
And I'm screaming as loud as I can just at the world. Really, I'm screaming at myself. You got this. Take it. Own it.
The cold front screamed in so quickly, it's not giving him a break. Just as he fixes the second cable, something else goes wrong. The tear duct in his right eye freezes open, blinding him in a flood of tears that freeze to his face.
To this day, I have the effects of that. I can't sustain any sort of a wind or any sort of flash or cold weather on my eyes. I tear. My eyes just run nonstop.
Job done. Michael makes his way down the pole, one agonizing frozen step after another.
I take off the outer snowsuit, and it was so frozen from my body's own perspiration that it literally stood like a store mannequin beside my truck as I climbed out of it, like a spaceman suit. It was literally standing there.
Working in extreme cold, as you want to have those breaks to let the body recover somewhat. If you stay out there for prolonged periods of time, you're increasing the risk of damage in those cold temperatures. So warming up on a regular basis certainly is recommended.
I'd say that this experience has brought two things to my experience in my job. One is it could be the middle of summer and I still have a snowsuit in my truck. And secondly, that Mother Nature's a real powerful thing. Like, it'll take and it'll just do what it wants to you. You're pretty small and insignificant, and you recognize that when you experience a situation like this. I'm certainly thankful that on that cold day I didn't lose a limb. I'm not missing toes, I'm not missing fingers. I'm thankful that I was able to persevere and push myself through it and find that strength to get the job done. It brings strength of character, but would I line up to do it again? Not likely, not likely.
Severe cold is the most dangerous weather element on the planet. When a cold front moves in fast, high winds and frigid temperatures can bring us to our knees. When extreme snow strikes quickly, it's smothering, blinding, and can stop you dead in your tracks. Gerald Scottapole has been a pilot for 30 years and trains other pilots to deal with emergency situations.
All over the world, I've seen incredible storms all over the place, in the tropics, in the Arctic, but the one that really stands out in my mind is in the Antarctic in a blizzard. I can barely see the engine that's only 3 feet from me in the blizzard. This is the weather event I will never forget.
All right, dispatch, this is Gerald here. We're in some pretty bad weather.
Antarctica is the coldest, windiest, and driest continent on Earth. Temperatures plunge below minus 100 degrees. Winds rage at more than 125 miles an hour. It's the worst place on Earth to be trapped in extreme weather. There's no one around to help you. Although it's in tune with snow and ice, Antarctica actually receives 1/10 of the snow of a city like Boston or New York. It's a desert, and the last place you'd expect to be caught in a killer snowstorm.
In the late fall of 1996, I was flying in the Antarctica. I was flying a Twin Otter aircraft on skis based out of a place called Patriot Hills in the Antarctica. We were flying adventures to the South Pole. Flying in the Antarctic can be beautiful, and it can be very challenging. If you don't know what you're doing, it can be very dangerous. You have things to deal with, such as mountainous terrain, high altitudes, extreme temperatures.
Gerald and his engineer load their plane. Passengers board. And they take off into the Antarctic sky.
The weather at the time was nice, clear, sunny. But in those years, we didn't have a lot of good weather reporting, especially where we were at. We were quite remote, and we kind of worked on our own. So we really had a procedure where if it's sunny, we go.
Before they can make the 3.5-hour flight back to base, they need to refuel.
The plan was to fuel up and then return back to base camp.
He reads the sky and checks the instruments on the aircraft. No sign of snow or dangerous weather. Snowstorms are so rare in the Antarctic, it's not even a concern. It's a 1-hour flight to the fueling station.
We're flying along to the fuel cache, and we're getting very close, but we can see basically a dark shadow coming across the ice and the snow, and it almost looked like a dark gray wall coming at us.
Suddenly, a low-pressure system moves in, allowing air to rise into the atmosphere, where it cools, condenses, and creates a furious snowstorm.
Unbeknownst to us, this storm was coming probably in excess of 100 kilometers per hour towards us. It actually caught us by surprise.
In terms of a pilot flying through a snowstorm, this is a situation where they can easily become disoriented. If there's terrain around, mountains and things of that nature, again, a lot of danger involved.
Gerald has no choice but to try and land the plane in the storm.
All right, dispatch, this is Gerald here. We're in some pretty bad weather.
If I would have remained in the air, the only thing that we could have done was try to get turned around with the storm and try and outrun it. But the problem is you're limited to the amount of fuel you have, and there's no support around there.
He prepares for an emergency landing and checks his GPS to ensure he doesn't collide with the fuel drums below, setting off a deadly explosion.
As we were coming down into the storm, we're just holding, and we know on our radar altimeter they were going to be getting closer, because we can see 50 feet, 40 feet, 30 feet, 20 feet, 10 feet, and you're just sitting there and you're like, okay, I hope I can feel pretty quick.
It's a white-knuckle descent. But Gerald expertly lands the plane.
It was kind of like one of those get out and kiss the ground moments. You were so happy to be on the ground rather than being flying in the air in this epic storm.
They're safe, or so they thought.
Once we landed and touched down, it was basically a whiteout. And I looked down on our GPS, and we're about approximately a quarter of a mile from our fuel cache. So I thought, okay, I'm going to taxi close to where it is. And I'm taxiing what I think along, because the aircraft is shaking so much, and we just see whiteout snow. And I tell the engineer that's with me, you know, we can't see anything, it's not safe, so let's just stop. That's when we both looked down and realized we weren't moving. The blizzard and the storm was shaking the aircraft so hard, I actually felt like I was taxiing over top of the snowdrifts. But at that point in time, I'm like, well, I guess we're shutting it down and we're spending however long. We don't know how long this storm's gonna last. We don't know how big it is. We don't have any weather reporting.
Yeah, dispatch, this is Gerald. It looks like we're going to have to ride out the storm here.
So we call on our HF radio to let our base camp know that we're down, we're safe on the ground. Then that's where everything started to get interesting, because what do you do in that extreme of blizzard?
Any blizzard is potentially dangerous if people are going outside in those situations, certainly the ones that last longer. But some of these blizzards can go on for a number of hours.
It's a surprise attack. The blizzard came out of nowhere. The team can't fly until it blows over. But hundreds of miles from help, they are not prepared for a long stay in the cold. The big question, how long will they be trapped in the snow? When extreme winter weather strikes out of nowhere, it can ground flights and bring air travel to a standstill. When it strikes in Antarctica, the coldest, windiest continent on Earth, consequences can be fatal. Adventure pilot Gerald Scottapole, his crew, and passengers are trapped in a blizzard on the ground in a remote Antarctic ice field, hundreds of miles from their base camp. Snowstorms are extremely rare in the Antarctic. They expect the squall to blow over within a couple of hours.
I can barely see the engine that's only 3 feet from me in the blizzard. At that point, it was protocol. If you didn't know how bad the storm was going to be, you would have to go dig what's called a dead man in.
The problem is, they have to go outside in the storm to do it.
Even trying to get the doors open was difficult. So we got the doors open, we both get out, and you had to struggle to walk. The wind was so strong. We got to the front of the aircraft, and now you're starting to dig down into the hard snow, which normally wouldn't be a big deal, but when the wind is blowing that strong, a lot of the snow that you're picking up is disappearing. And you still need this snow in order to pack down on your dead man. What a dead man is basically what we used is a aluminum plate with a cable on it, and you would dig it down into the snow approximately 4 feet, and then run the cable out and attach it to an attach point on the front of the aircraft. And what that would do is prevent, in extreme weather, the airplane actually flipping over in the wind. Because especially in the Antarctic, you can get those high winds that would flip an aircraft over. It has happened before. The dead man acts as an anchor, because if an airplane flips over onto its back and you're inside of it, you're going for a ride. Probably took us 15, 20 minutes to get this thing dug in, packed down, and stable. Got it tied to the aircraft. That was step one. The next step is to get your engine tents on, because in these storms, your engines can pack right full of snow. So that was a bit of an issue, because in order to put the engine tents in a Twin Otter, somebody has to go up onto the wing. Now you're on top of an airplane in this blizzard trying to get the engine tents on. We got it on what we call the number 2 engine on the right-hand side, and the storm picked up so severe, we decided at that point in time it wasn't even safe to try and go up on a wing. We didn't know how long the storm was going to go, so we elected, we've got one on, that'll help keep that engine from being compacted with snow. That really helped save us at that point.
Hours go by. The situation goes from bad to worse. Like a sandstorm in the desert, 200-mile-an-hour winds whip up snow from the ground and blast it at the plane.
The storm was picking up in severity. The analogy would be if you had your airplane plunked inside of a snow globe and somebody give it a big shake. That's what it felt like, only the shaking didn't stop. We were just more or less in survival mode, waiting out the storm.
What they hoped would be just a couple of hours has turned into a day.
Take that, because we're gonna get cold, so have that there.
Exhausted, they try to sleep, but it's not easy.
All of a sudden, we would start to hear kind of a creaking, cracking. What was happening as the storm picked up in intensity is the aircraft was actually starting to lift and try to fly. And suddenly, it feels like the whole airplane is going to start flying. We're starting to feel the cracking of the skis breaking loose from where it's frozen onto the snow. At that point in time, you're like, please, dead man, make sure that you hold the aircraft. We had no heat. We had no water with us, so what we would have to do is we would have to get snow from outside to melt, and that was our source of water. The only thing that we had to cook for all four of us was just a small little single burner flame, and we had to be very, very careful because it used naphtha, which is a highly flammable liquid. We couldn't go outside because the wind would take it and it would be gone. And when we dug into our survival gear, we realized the only thing we had was about a 20-pound bag of rolled oats. It was a bit of a rodeo, I guess, if you will, to try and hold this stove on the floor of the aircraft stable, put the snow in it, melt it, and then try and cook our rolled oats. As time progressed, there's a lot of things that are going through your mind.
Yeah, it's coming down pretty hard, guys. I think we're gonna be here. We're gonna be here a while, I think.
Now you're like, okay, should we start rationing our food? Sometimes these storms can last a week or more. What goes through your mind is nobody can come to you.
The plane bounces, shakes, and rattles as hurricane-level winds hammer the plane with the blowing snow.
Yeah, looks like it's lightening up a little bit.
Finally, after 36 grueling hours, there's a lull in the storm.
And it finally started to get down to the point where we could get out and assess what the aircraft was like.
Well, we head outside and see if we can get the engines uncovered, yeah? Sure. Give it a shot, you never know.
Once we got out of the aircraft, initially everything looked like it weathered the storm quite well. Our engine tent was still on, our anchor had held well, we weren't buried.
Gerald holds his breath as he attempts to start the plane. After 36 hours in a blizzard, the engine miraculously revs up. Cold, tired, and hungry, they're finally able to escape the ice field and fly back to base camp.
When I look back, the reason this weather event really stands out is normally if you're flying and you go to a place, you're going to a runway. And you get there, if the weather's not good enough to land, you just turn and go to your alternate. It's fine. When we were flying in the Antarctic, we never had that support. We didn't know what the weather was going to be. We didn't know that the weather was going to come in that quickly. And I've never been trapped in an airplane for 36 hours in my life. We were so remote. It was us. There was nobody else.
Despite his training, Gerald was at the mercy of Mother Nature.
The weather was there, we couldn't change it, and we couldn't go anywhere, and we were trapped. The end result was everyone was safe and the mission was accomplished. That was the main thing. And that was the day the weather changed my life.
Trapped in a blizzard, exposed to biting cold extreme winter weather can be a killer, especially if you're caught in both with no way out. The The Beartooth Mountains are located in northwest Wyoming with a height reaching 12,807 feet. During the winter months, this area can reach as low as 10 degrees Fahrenheit, with the constant Wyoming winds making it so much colder. The area received an average of 45 inches of snow. The average U.S. city gets 26 inches of snow a year. The only road that travels through this mountain range is US 296. It's not uncommon in the winter to find travelers stranded in their cars on this stretch of road. Snowplow operator Joe Klein lives in Cody, Wyoming, at the base of Beartooth Mountain. Each year, he spends 200 hours plowing the snow on the mountain highway.
It really kicked in. We had 70-mile-an-hour winds.
Are you serious?
And it was 70 below.
Unbelievable.
And then I got stuck. How many snowstorms have I seen? Dozens. Dozens of snowstorms, yeah. You can leave the house and it'd be doing nothing, and you get out there and you just battle all day. The road is called 296. It's 46 miles long, and it's about 18 miles to the summit. And the summit's about 9,200 feet, I believe. About every mile up, it gets a little bit colder, all the way to the top. If it's windy and there's a lot of snow on the face of the mountain, that's almost 99% guarantee it's gonna be a long day. The safety of a job is when we gotta go up the mountain in the middle of the night. There isn't nobody else around, and you can get caught. It's dark, you get in whiteout conditions, and all of a sudden you're stuck. As a snowplow driver, I see all road conditions, big drifts, heavy accumulation, wind, cold. But that day, everything got different. It was a bad day.
Well, one of the reasons in terms of why we have so much snow on mountains is where we're located on that mountain range with respect to the wind flow. One of the things that we look for in terms of the generation of snow is rising motion in the atmosphere. If you have air hitting a mountain terrain being forced to rise, that's one of the factors that we look for to make that snow occur. So the windward side of the mountain where that wind is blowing up the mountain, often a favorite area for significant snowfalls as well. The higher the mountain, the potential for those temperatures to drop below freezing as that air rises. Certainly in the early part of the winter, while it still may be above freezing near the ground, as that air rises up the mountain, it's going to encounter colder air, more chance then of the snow forming.
Lee!
Joe? What's the weather like out there?
Oh, it's terrible.
December 2016. Joe returns home after finishing his plow shift on the mountain. Little did he know that his day was not finishing, it was just starting.
Yeah, I worked from 7:30 till 4 that day. Went home, had dinner. We knew it looked like a storm brewing for the evening, but nothing out of the ordinary. It kind of always looks that way when you look at the top of the mountain, you know. But about 8:30,
hello.
Got a phone call from TMC.
Yeah, I just finished in.
TMC is Traffic Managed Control. Said there was someone stuck on the mountain, needed assistance.
And you can't find anybody else tonight? I mean, I just got home. I've been out all day.
If they call 911, they'll get a hold of the Highway Patrol, and the Highway Patrol will tell TMC that they need someone out, and TMC will call us. People get stuck on the mountain a lot, and it's mostly in the afternoon and evenings, coming back if the weather sets in, and it can be a lot of trouble. When I got the phone call, I thought that, which they probably were, tourists coming out, and they got stuck in a drift about 3/4 of the way up the summit. We're a snowplow driver. We can clear them a path. That's about all we can do. If they need assistance with towing or something, we can call in on the radio and have tow trucks come and help them get out. Or if they need the Highway Patrol, we get the Highway Patrol. Well, at home, it was just a little breezy at home. I had no idea it was snowing like that out on the mountain, you know, but you never do until you get there. Well, I just threw on my plain work clothes, you know. We carry a cover hauls and winter things in our truck.
Oh, wait a minute, hon. Here's some water.
Oh, thank you.
So I went out. I told the wife I'd probably be back in like 3 hours. It shouldn't take too long.
Joe heads out and heads up the mountain. This was not the first time Joe received a call like this. Drivers stuck in the mountain road are a normal occurrence.
Well, when I was making my way out there, I talked to TMC on the radio and tried to get an exact location where they were, and they give me a milepost 29. So I figured, well, they're close to the top. So I was working my way up, and it was snowing, and conditions were getting worse rapidly as I worked my way up. About 18 miles to the base of the mountain. We got our normal drift areas, and it was starting to drift in. Well, it ain't too bad yet. I'll make it to them, you know. But the closer I got to them, the worse it got. And when I got a few miles from them, it really kicked in. We had 70-mile-an-hour winds that night, and it was 70 below, they were saying on the radio. So I thought, well, I gotta get to them, you know, not knowing what kind of trouble they were in.
Yeah, dispatch, I'm just coming up on these people to my left right now. I'm gonna pull over and assist. Copy?
And I found them on the backside of a drift. They were just sitting there. And when I got up to them, the snow and stuff was blowing so bad.
Snow continues to fall heavily on the region and will continue throughout the night. Joe needs to get these stranded people off this mountain quickly before the weather and the snow get any worse.
Just opened a window and he stuck his head out, and I just motioned for him to go down my tracks, you know. Work the drifts out of the way so they could have a path, you know. They were sitting here and I got them all clean, got them an area clean to get out of where they were and the way they went. But it was closing in fast behind me. I was worried that they'd get stuck in front of me going back down, and I couldn't get down, but that wasn't my trouble that night.
With the stranded passengers making their way down the mountain, it's now time for Joe to turn around and head back home.
I had to go like a mile farther to get a spot to turn around because it's just a narrow road. And the higher I got, the worse it was. It was so deep and I couldn't. Got about halfway turned around and I got stuck and I couldn't move. So it's about 9:45 in the evening at this time when I realized I was stuck. Tried to back up a little bit. I maybe got a little bit. So it dawned on me, you know, this is stupid. If I get hurt here, I know there's no one gonna get near me because I'll freeze to death. It was that cold and, you know, I just got buried in snow.
December 2016. A massive snowstorm, blowing winds, and snowdrifts on the Beartooth Mountains of Wyoming have stranded snowplow operator Joe Klein.
So it dawned on me, you know, this is stupid. If I get hurt here, I know there's no one gonna get near me because I'll freeze to death. It was that cold and, you know, I just got buried in snow.
Are you serious? Unbelievable.
In addition to being stuck in the snow due to the winds and elevation, it's the drop in temperature that is a huge concern.
The wind up there can get up to 70 miles an hour, and it was that night. You absolutely couldn't see nothing for blowing snow. So I got back in the truck and I called the boss.
I tried to turn around. I tried to go back up the hill.
Told him my situation to see if he could get a truck up to assist. Yeah, after I talked to the boss, and the boss said he's gonna call for assistance, another truck to come up and see if both of us could get me out. it's probably 10 o'clock till Mike got on his way. And I was just watching the clock, and I thought, God, if he's coming, he should be coming here soon, you know, it shouldn't be that bad. So I give him a shout on the radio and said, how far are you? And he said, my God, I'm down at the bottom end. I can't make it around the first corner. It's socked in that bad. I said, really? I went through there. It was just starting to drift when I come through there.
The assistance that Joe desperately needed is still at the bottom of the mountain, unable to make the first turn up the highway.
And he says, completely blocked off. I can't get through. And he was getting stuck and getting himself out. So I thought, well, it's going to be a long one. The mountains and things are beautiful, but they can, I don't know if I can say that, kill you.
Well, we talk about significant snowfalls, the Wyoming event. When we look around the world, it's quite possible to get very, very intense snowfalls. Certain parts of Canada, we can see snowfall rates of 10, 15 centimeters in an hour. We've had snow squall events, lake effect snow events, that have dumped more than 70 or 80 centimeters in one event.
Alone in the snow, the cold, and the darkness. With only one bar left on his phone, Joe makes a call.
Joe, are you okay?
I called my wife. I was more concerned about her worrying about me. She was upset. She was worried. I said, I'll be all right. I'll be back when they get me out. I could hear she was pretty upset on the phone. I told her it'd be all right. Yeah, she was crying. I was just worried that the truck would stay running. It had to stay running because if in that conditions you shut them diesels off and they may not start. I didn't want to try to conserve that way, so I just left it run. I just bumped the idle up on the truck. I had to run it at 1500 just to keep warm in there. That's how strong and cold the wind was. My elevation is probably 8,500 where I was. The radio always works, but there's some areas in the mountains where we lose our main radio. And I had just far enough, I had one bar on my phone where I could talk to my wife occasionally and see how it's going. Well, there's a lot of chatter with the fellow that was stuck down below. He had to call another guy to bring the loader up to try to get him to come up further. It was just a long ordeal. When you're sitting up there waiting for someone, because I could see a corner down below me, waiting for lights to come around that corner. Well, when I heard that the guy that got called out behind me couldn't get up. Then he called another guy to assist him. I pretty well knew it was going to be a long night. If they couldn't get there with what they had until they got bigger equipment in, it still would have been the next morning.
Joe now realizes he will be left alone on the mountain, 8,500 feet up, with severe wind and snow.
It was dark. All you just sitting there with your lights flashing, and that's all you could see was snow, and I had water. I had like a half bottle of water, because when I left the house, I told the wife it should be like 3 hours, I should be back home. On a normal deal like that, it would have been, but that's just luck of the draw, I guess. I had the radio. Was keeping contact with the boss. There was just listening to chatter on the radio, you know. I still had a full tank of fuel, but I didn't know if it would run at that speed all night long.
And all night long, it was.
Well, it was 9 hours later. It's about 6:30 in the morning, and the right side of my truck was about buried in snow because the wind was coming in that direction. The driver's side was kind of clear because it all blew away, you know. I was awfully glad to see lights coming around the corner. An old Army truck made into a tow truck, 6-wheel drive, and it took them a couple hours to get to me because they had it chained up and it was going, you know, they had to kind of make their own road coming up.
Hey, Joe, you okay?
You know, when the tow truck finally got to me there, he jumped out, seen that I was okay first before anything, you know.
After nearly 9 hours alone in his truck, Joe was saved.
Well, he hooked the chain on me and got me squared away and let him out down the mountain. If the truck would have shut off for that, I don't know what I'd done. Then the fear would have started. That many hours, I'm afraid it would have started getting in on me pretty good, because it was cold even with the engine running. So I don't know if I would have had to wait them 9 hours, even with the clothing and boots and gloves and stuff I had. I don't know, it could have been ugly. The snow and the cold and the wind is a very powerful thing. More powerful than you think. Sometimes you maybe get that you feel invincible and you're not. It'll catch you.
To create cold weather events, we need to have air moving, usually from high latitudes, from the north in Canada, moving south, being carried relatively quickly so it doesn't have enough time to, in a sense, warm up, and then impacting on communities across Canada with what we call cold fronts, the front of that cold air just coming down across, and that's what causes the really impact of the cold events. We can also have longer-term events, but they're not usually accompanied by precipitation or wind, so the impacts are, in a sense, less.
So the dangers of being caught in extremely cold temperatures and also being caught in extremely cold wind chills is the damage it can do to the human body. If we're not dressed appropriately, if we don't have a good pair of mitts on, something covering our head, a good pair of boots, we're losing heat from the body. And if there's a wind, that's going to scour that heat off even more, going to make our body work harder and harder to stay warm. And it's the extremities that we first start to see the influences on, because the body will shut down except for the core, just to keep ourselves alive in those extreme cold situations. In terms of how quickly the human body is at risk from a frostbite situation, wind chill, again, a big factor in this. And for wind chills of about -30 or -40, we're talking about frostbite for exposed skin on the order of somewhere between 10 to 20 minutes. But as we get to extreme wind chills and extreme temperatures, -55 Celsius and colder, we're talking about less than 2 minutes for exposed flesh to freeze. Hypothermia, again, is the idea of the human body not being able to cope with the extreme cold. And what the human body starts to do then is basically shut down. When we talk about signs of hypothermia, signs of extreme cold on the human body, it's when we stop shivering, when we've actually gone to the point where the human body, again, one of its mechanisms to fight the cold is to shiver, to try to keep that warmth flowing in the body. When we start, when the shivering stops, basically, that's an indication that the body is starting to shut down, trying to keep that core temperature warm, but again, at the expense of our extremities.
It's rare.
This is a powerful wind, enough to knock over a tree.
It's unique.
2 more steps.
It's Mother Nature at her strangest.
I pretty well had decided I wasn't going to survive.
These are the stories from people who work in extreme weather.
Oh, we just lost a big window.
It was just like a bomb went off.
And nobody is coming to save you.
And the storms they'll never forget.
Wham! Crack! Bang! Bang! Bang!
We're going to die.
Plus, the how and why behind the world's worst weather.
Mother Nature is one mother.
Mother Nature can dish out some strange weather. These phenomena may be explained by science, but sometimes are so rare they cannot be explained at all. Volcanoes trigger some of the strangest weather on the planet, as was the case on a small remote island called Ambro.
Ambrim volcano is in Vanuatu in the southwest Pacific. And Ambrim is very special because it doesn't have a lake of water, it has a lake of lava. That lava lake is somewhere between 1,100 degrees Celsius and 1,200 degrees Celsius. You do not want to fall into that lake. You do not want to take a swim into that lake because you will dissolve. Think of the Earth as an egg, and the eggshell is the crust, the white of the egg is the mantle, and the yellow part is the core. The mantle is the part of the Earth underneath the crust, which is relatively thin, and magma, which eventually gets out onto the surface as lava, ultimately comes from the mantle, not from the core, but from the mantle. So why do some volcanoes erupt all the time, and why do some volcanoes erupt intermittently and go back to sleep and so forth? Has to do with the nature of the plumbing system. So a volcano that's erupting all the time must have a well-established plumbing system between the mantle and the surface, which is a pretty amazing thing, actually.
An active volcano emits gases, and when these gases collide with Mother Nature, the result is a strange weather phenomenon called acid rain. The results can be deadly, especially for the brave few who dare to venture inside the heart of the volcano.
My name is George Karunas. I'm a professional explorer and storm chaser. I've spent the past 20 years exploring the most extreme places on Earth, from the most ferocious weather to erupting volcanoes. I've been fascinated with volcanoes since I was a little kid. You can stand on a volcano and see the lava coming out of it and understand civilization as we know it could be wiped out because of a very large eruption.
Oh, standing up to the edge, unbelievably hot. It just burns your face, burns your ears. With the protection on, I can stand there, but without it, I can feel the heat just from here, and it's unbelievably hot.
I have melted my boots on volcanoes. I have had to dodge pieces of lava flying through the air. I just can't get enough of them. In August 2014, I was part of an expedition that brought us to the island of Ambrym with the goal of not just going and visiting the volcano, but to descend 1,200 feet down inside. There's only 5 places in the world where these lakes of lava exist. And I thought for years that I would never get the opportunity to go there because it's too difficult, it's too dangerous, it's too expensive. But I was finally able to fulfill that dream.
But for George, a sudden change in weather would quickly turn that dream into a nightmare.
I thought I'd seen it all. I got a little more than I bargained for.
On a volcano, there are gases being emitted all the time. And when those gases interact with rainwater, the rainwater becomes acidic, extremely acidic, because the gases that are being emitted from the volcano are highly acid in nature.
All right, gentlemen, let's get suited up.
At the top of the volcano, George and his lava-chasing team prepare for a thrilling but highly dangerous adventure.
There's 100% uncertainty on every step of this expedition. At the summit of that volcano, there's very little chance of any kind of assistance or rescue. And there's a constant cloud of gas nearby. If there's any type of rain happening or even the chance of rain, we won't even bother trying to descend down, because once you begin that process, you're locked in.
To ascend quickly from craters and out of danger, climbers often carry a specialized piece of equipment.
Hook this one up.
The most important piece of equipment, a device called an act safe, which is a gasoline-powered rope ascender. Think of it as a lawnmower engine that you clip to your climbing harness. You can then thread your rope through it, pull it to start it. It has a throttle, and it will act like your own personal elevator to pull you up to get you out of the crater. Without it, you're in big trouble. The crater itself is 1,200 feet deep. That's deeper than the Empire State Building is tall. So imagine having to rappel down almost a straight cliff with a pool of boiling lava below you.
Looks good. Good. All right, let's do this into the furnace.
His backpack loaded with safety gear.
See you boys later.
George begins his descent into the jaws of the crater.
I had done a fair amount of rappelling inside volcanoes already, but this was my deepest rappel. So I was a little nervous. That first overhang is a bit intimidating because it's a straight drop, about 300 feet. You can smell the volcano, and every now and then, the wind will blow. You'll feel a little bit of the heat on your face, even though it's still several hundred meters away. And you look over your shoulder, and there's the glowing pit of lava right behind you. A little bit at a time, descend a little bit at a time. It takes several hours to rappel from base camp down to the bottom. It's like descending into the belly of the earth.
Exhausted after hours spent climbing down the crater, George finally makes it to the bottom.
Hey, George, you all good?
Just reached the bottom, guys.
Copy that.
Talk to me if you need to.
There are few places on planet Earth that are more desolate, dangerous. It feels almost like setting foot on a new planet. And with that suit, feeling very much like an astronaut, you walk over to the edge of the lava. It gets louder and louder, and it sounds like the devil's washing machine. The lake of lava is about 60 or 70 meters across. And from the point at the very edge where I'm standing, it's a 20-meter drop straight into liquid rock. 2 more steps, sploosh. And just look out on the waves, literal waves of liquid rock crashing against the side. It makes the sound like being at the beach, but deeper. You could probably count on one hand the number of people that have stood in that spot.
For 30 minutes, George explores the crater, unaware of ominous rain clouds rapidly forming around the volcano. Although George's team members were aware of the rain,
Hey, George.
they were unaware of its effect.
What's up, guys?
We got some rain here at base. You might want to consider coming back.
When you're at the bottom of the crater, you can't see the horizon, so there's no way for you to know if there's bad weather coming.
It's getting pretty heavy, George. I'd recommend you come back.
All right, headed back up.
Copy that.
The rain had started. And it wasn't just a light drizzle, it was starting to really come down.
Rain that falls through volcanic gas clouds can be as corrosive as battery acid, causing serious damage to anything or anyone it touches.
This acid is so destructive that it will eat away at all kinds of materials. Within a matter of minutes, I could see the coating on my aluminum heat suit starting to slough off because of the acidity. Now I'm thinking, great, I have to ascend through this rain. And this is going to be nothing but awful for the next 2 hours, because there's no shortcut. If anything goes wrong at the bottom, you might as well be on the summit of Everest. You might as well be on another planet, because nobody is going to come to rescue you. I go to start my ascender, and the starting cable comes off in my hand. Here I am, 1,200 feet down, and my only means of egress has now split in two. And the string on the starter cord was damaged by the acid.
The starter cord on George's gasoline-powered ascender is his lifeline. Without the ascender, he has no hope of escaping the volcano as toxic rain pours down on him. But fortunately for George, before it broke, the cord did its job.
Guys, do you copy?
Copy, George Base.
I got the motor started, but this thing just broke on me. If it stops, I'm done for. You're gonna have to be at the top watching for me, all right?
Copy that, we're on the way.
Luckily, it started on that first pull. Gave it some gas and started walking up as it pulled me.
There's no time to lose. George needs to get out now. And the only way out is straight up, outside and exposed to the acid rain.
It was awful. I was trying to ascend with a broken piece of equipment that, if it had stalled, would have trapped me and stranded me. And meanwhile, the acid rain was still coming down. And I can tell that it's very strong acid rain. Stronger than what we get at base camp, because at the bottom of the crater, there's even more gas above you. So the strength of this acid is unlike anything I've ever experienced.
If you were in the crater and it was raining and there was a lot of gas coming out of the volcano, the rain would be intensely acid. If you were taking pictures with a camera, you would probably fairly quickly notice that the camera would stop working because the camera would start getting corroded. Anything metallic will be ruined. A cell phone will be ruined by this intense acidity, just simply because the acidity is so strong, so elevated.
In addition to acid rain, volcanoes create strange weather in other ways. When lava flows into groundwater, it creates steam explosions, forcing small pebbles or large rocks to shoot into the air, called ballistic projectiles. We are familiar with volcanic ash carried by wind. However, if wind dies down while a volcano is active, gas and other pollutants can create a volcanic smog known as fog. Drained from the heat and his descent into the volcano, George inches up the 1,200-foot deep crater. His only hope of escape, a motorized lifeline with a broken starter cord.
The last thing in the world I want is for this thing to stall with me on the rope. And I'm thinking, oh, please stop raining. Please don't stall.
As George slowly and steadily ascends the crater, acid rain eats away at his ropes.
Please don't stall. Please don't stall. Please don't stall.
In these brutal conditions, George knows his equipment won't hold out much longer.
There are few things more miserable than being cold, wet, and not just being soaked in water, but being soaked in acid. When the raindrops hit your face, it starts to burn your eyes and sting your skin, and you taste that acrid, metallic flavor in your mouth. It was painful. My eyes were stinging. And I wear contact lenses. So it makes things even more difficult for me. I'm worried about my rigid, gas-permeable contact lenses literally dissolving inside my eye sockets. So I'm trying to wipe my eyes when I can and trying to keep the machine from stalling.
Come on! Finally, after 3 agonizing hours, George makes it to the upper rim of the volcano and safety.
By the time I got to the top, I was soaked to the bone. All my gear was busted, but it felt so good to get back to base camp knowing that I was alive.
If I were going to visit a lava lake at an active volcano, the first thing I would do is make sure somebody knew where I was going. And in terms of acid rain, which I think is a very interesting problem in this case, knowing the weather patterns is very important as well. And so you would choose the time of the year, which is the driest to go. There still will be a chance of rain, but the probability will be lower.
Wow. This was a serious malfunction, bordering on catastrophic.
Believe that?
All it takes is a few things to compound together to create an absolute tragedy. There was a good chance that I could have to spend hours trapped in one of the most inhospitable places on Earth. This is a place that is not conducive to human life. I've actually done several expeditions again back to that exact crater. However, we take a few more precautions now.
I'm about 30 meters away from the lake of lava. I gotta put my heat suit on.
And I'll probably go back there again.
Strange weather, like acid rain, is created by the random mixture of a volcanic eruption colliding with a rainstorm. And just as bizarre is when winds combine with mountains, they accelerate out of control and literally rip trees out of the ground. When you think of Idaho, you don't usually think of strange weather, but being only 350 miles from the Pacific Ocean, its mountain ranges are positioned perfectly to trap severe weather systems, and sometimes bizarre events can occur. There's an expression that residents of Idaho are known to say: if you don't like the weather, just wait 15 minutes. However, 15 minutes can lead to strange and life-threatening weather. Benjamin Earwicker's love of the outdoors began when he was 7 and continues today. He's traveled to 37 different countries, and he's hiked through most of them.
I'm an avid backpacker and hiker ever since I grew up in the mountains of Central Oregon in the Pacific Northwest. I love being in the outdoors. I love being in the backcountry whenever possible. Well, wind is something that I think about whenever we pick a campsite. I try to find shelter so that we're protected from the wind, because in the middle of the night, if we're out in a flimsy ultralight tent, the wind can really change the dynamics. It can actually be quite dangerous if there are trees nearby. I think I'm educated by both experience and by taking the time to prepare myself to be in the backcountry and in these situations that are oftentimes unpredictable. I try to prepare myself so that I know what I'm up against, so that I'm prepared in the event that something goes wrong.
Oh, it's recording.
Oh, hi.
So this is our sleeping quarters for the night.
So I've hiked and backpacked on 5 different continents in 30+ countries around the world, and I know how to handle myself in a range of situations and weather patterns, except this one time.
Go!
So in terms of the interaction of wind and complex terrain, what we can sometimes see happening is in areas of higher elevation, when the winds sort of line up near the surface and aloft from one direction, it's a very stable situation. Those winds can then sink suddenly as they come down through a steep valley or the lee side of a mountain. The winds can accelerate as they go down the slope, pick up speed as they go for at the base of the valley. When those winds hit, again, could be a very dangerous situation.
Scientists have long been perplexed as to why in cyclone winds, trees are not pulled out of the ground. Studies have confirmed that there is a magic breaking point. Literally, only after wind speeds of 90 miles per hour do trees break, no matter what their size or diameter.
In terms of trees falling down in the wind, yes, this is something that can happen. A lot depends on the type of tree. Shallow-rooted trees in wet soil can be much more susceptible to being knocked over by strong winds, whereas more deeply rooted trees in somewhat harder soil, it's going to take stronger winds to damage them.
Oh, man. I can't wait.
June 2012. It started as a fun adventure.
Yeah, I agree.
Benjamin planned a 32-mile hike in the mountains near Crooked River with his good friend.
I currently live in Boise, Idaho, which is about 2 hours south of the Crooked River area. Crooked River's in the central mountains of Idaho. Former mining town, a lot of beautiful mountains. So this was a trip that was just really close to home. Nothing exotic, nothing out of the ordinary. Just a nice, easy weekend backpacking trip. So we thought. When we looked at the weather forecast, it was projected to be sunny, maybe a little bit of precipitation, but nothing out of the ordinary. So we thought this was a great weekend to go up and do some biking, do a little hiking and camping.
Where are we going?
And we stashed our mountain bikes so that we could find them later and they'd be protected.
We're about right here.
Then our plan was to do a 13-mile loop back to the bikes.
Oh, okay, yeah, that shouldn't be too far then.
And then go on the rest of the loop on bike. So we dropped the bikes, we drove down, parked the car, and started out on our trip. Beautiful day, not a cloud in the sky.
Although there was not a cloud in the sky, this was Idaho, and in 15 minutes, the weather could totally change.
At that point, we had been hiking for about 4 or 5 hours, so we had made it up over the first ridge. We're not worried about anything. I can see the clouds starting to build in the distance, and we thought, well, we might get a rain shower later tonight, but it's far enough away that we weren't too worried at that point.
It'll get better by the time we keep walking.
We're enjoying kind of a meandering hike along the forested hills, the ponderosa pines. Just a beautiful day in central Idaho. So the area we were hiking in is filled with a lot of different fir trees and pine trees, but ponderosa pines are one of the striking features of this part of the country. Ponderosa pines are a very large, sturdy pine. They can often be 60 to 80 feet tall.
You know about those bugs that eat the trees, some sort of insect.
Oh, really?
And all of a sudden, I heard a huge ponderosa pine fall down.
What was that?
Fortunately for us, the tree fell in the opposite direction, toward the hill on the opposite bank. But had it faced us, it would have easily spanned the Crooked River at that point. And all of a sudden, the wind starts to pick up. And pine needles start to blow at us down this canyon. And debris is being kicked up by this wind, and it increasingly grows within about a 5 to 10 minute period. Those clouds that we had seen in the distance were becoming more and more ominous, billowing up, much larger than before, and getting closer.
True to Idaho's weather patterns, within 10 minutes, unexpected wind has entered the downslope of the valley. The winds haven't just shown up, they have sped up.
Within about 30 seconds of the first tree falling, we heard a second, and then a third tree fall around us.
Go, go.
The hair stood up on the back of my neck. I was prepared for just about any other weather condition, rain, snow, thunder shower. But when the wind started picking up and throwing debris at us, I thought something's different this time.
The backpackers decide to seek immediate shelter.
What's going through my mind is the thought that this is a powerful wind enough to knock over a tree. What happens if another tree falls directly on us? I could barely keep my eyes open because of all the dust and debris that at this point was swirling around us. So it wasn't just gusts of wind blowing debris every couple of seconds. This was a circular, powerful wind that was pushing us forward on the trail. And we knew in that instant that we had to find shelter, and we had to find shelter fast.
With trees crashing all around, finding shelter fast was not going to be easy.
we thought, where do we need to go to be protected from the trees? So we thought the only place that we can see is the creek bed itself.
Well, you don't see wind, but the dangerous thing about these strong wind events is what you're seeing is what the wind has picked up. Bits of trees. You're not seeing the wind, but you're seeing physically what that wind may have picked up, and it's really that flying debris that causes the concerns for injuries and death.
So we get down next to this ledge, down by the river, and as we're doing that, we're hearing trees still falling into the river. And we're finally feeling like, okay, we made the right decision. We've got out of harm's way. The trees are still falling, but at least if they fall on us, we're protected. And then I start to hear kind of a rustling in the shale and in the rocks. And there's a coiled up rattlesnake hidden in the rocks about arm's length from me at that point. Coiled up, potentially ready to strike. At this point, the car is probably 8 to 9 miles away. Our bikes are at least 6 miles away. So we had no easy solution to get out of there. And at this point, we knew that we couldn't go back where we came from because our path had been blocked by the falling trees. Our best bet at this point was to find a large boulder or a rock face that we could then shelter next to. The wind is still howling, the trees are still falling down. So we find a rock outcropping in the distance. And right as we're heading towards this rock, we look up, and in the same spot that we're headed is a small brown bear. We could hear the bear and perhaps another bear calling to one another, making noises to signal their location. So the sound I heard was kind of like a low growl, kind of like a ruh, ruh. But in that moment, we didn't have a choice because we couldn't stay there. The wind is howling, the trees are falling. We have to get shelter under this rock.
What we find is animals in some cases have that sixth sense, the realization that there's a forest fire nearby and they're evacuating that area, the realization that there could be a storm brewing, perhaps a change in atmospheric pressure is causing those animals to move to another area. So there does seem to be some innate ability within Mother Nature to recognize the advance of a storm.
So at this point, we make a run for it. And we take off sprinting down this path, and we make it past where we heard the low growling sound from the bushes to a granite slab.
Hey, over here. I think we're good here.
And we decided that at that point we needed to find shelter there and perhaps stay there the night. We were under the granite slab for at least 9 hours.
Oh, jeez.
I had thoughts of whether or not we would even make it out of this situation. The danger to us physically was very real. It was very tangible, palpable. I felt that one or both of us could be injured or killed by these falling trees. This was a pretty restless night for me. The storm continued to brew over time. I would say the wind died down after probably 2 to 3 hours, but then we would have gusts of wind all night long. Most of that time, I was just listening and waiting and hoping that a tree wouldn't fall. So the next morning when we were able to hike out, we stopped counting fallen trees that had fallen across the path after 40 or 45 trees. What I've learned from this experience is that no matter how well prepared you are, you have to expect the unexpected. You have to be prepared for what you can't possibly imagine. This is the wilderness. Weather is unpredictable. We can't control what's going to happen no matter what the weather forecast says. So now when I backpack, when I'm out in the wilderness, I'm thinking about what are the weather conditions, what is the wind going to do, and how will that impact my choices. So the interesting thing about wind, you can't touch it, you can't see it. It's kind of one of those ethereal things that happens when you're out in nature. We don't think about wind. It's one of those things that happens to you or that you can't really see. You see its impact.
Go, go.
And that was the weather event that I will never forget.
Rain mixed with gases can be deadly. Wind mixed with nature can be catastrophic. Mix rain and wind together and add a rare phenomenon that only Mother Nature can explain, and you have a recipe for disaster. Nebraska is a common state for tornadoes in the United States, sitting right in the middle of Tornado Alley, with an average of over 60 tornadoes a year, 19 in the month of June alone. Between June 16th and 18th, 2014, this area was hit by 76 tornadoes, and once 2 tornadoes at the same time. A rare phenomenon called twin tornadoes hit the small town of Pilger, Nebraska. Population 350. Gene Willers was the president of the local bank. He has lived his entire life in this state and has witnessed tornadoes since he was a young boy.
My name is Gene Willers. I'm a retired bank president. Been in banking most of my life. In a village such as Pilger, we don't have a lot of turnover. Our location is a small location. We have 7 employees. I think of my staff as family. Pretty close relationship. You care about each other. It's an important part of it. I guess I'm here talking about weather, not as an expert, but as someone that's lived through it. Growing up on a farm in Nebraska, we watch the weather. It's just part of our makeup. And so we take storm warnings very seriously. We always are aware of our surroundings as far as our weather and where we can take shelter, those type of things. I was thinking the other day, how many tornado warnings have I been through? Somewhere around 30. I'm not a stranger to tornadoes, no. But this is one I'll never forget.
Gene may not have been a stranger to tornadoes, but this day was going to bring a rare phenomenon: twin tornadoes.
A twin tornado are 2 tornadoes, separate tornadoes, but they originate from one supercell thunderstorm.
Normally, one tornado is formed from one supercell. Scientists know how tornadoes are formed. However, they still don't know why some thunderstorms produce tornadoes and why others do not.
A twin tornado is very rare. On average, studies have shown that maybe you will see every 10 to 15 years one supercell thunderstorm produce 2 separate tornadoes. But we don't have a lot of data on twin tornadoes to begin with. For all we know, they're probably even more rare, upwards of 30, maybe even 40 years.
June 16, 2014. It was like any other working day for Gene. With one last appointment to attend in a neighboring town, Gene was looking forward to a game of golf after work. Little did Gene know that this typical day was just the calm before the storm. ×2.
I made a tee time at the Stanton Golf Course, which is about 10 miles to the west. When I saw the weather in the morning on television, it indicated that we were in a moderate risk area. After I left the meeting mid-afternoon, I could see that things were developing, that we were probably going to have some thunderstorms. And so I called and canceled the tee time.
No, golf's not going to happen today.
Instead of going home, I decided just to drop by the bank and tidy up a few things and then go home. There was possibilities of some sightings. It was concerning. As I came closer to Pilger, it was getting worse. It was muggy. Clouds were spinning quite a bit, and that's a little bit unusual. You just don't see that very often. That was a sign of things to come.
A distracted Gene leaves his cell phone in his car and heads into the bank. Gene arrives back at the bank shortly before closing.
Afternoon. Was going to pop in for 15 minutes and then go. There were a couple matters that I wanted to take care of and talk to employees about. Most of the weather stations in Nebraska offer storm alerts that will come on your cell phone. About that time, the employees, at least 3 or 4, had alerts, and you could just hear them going off like all over the place. And I think one employee actually had a National Weather Service alert on theirs. You know, I was in my office, I heard these warnings going off, and they were almost all simultaneous, you know, so I looked out the window, you know, and saw that it had gotten worse. It was getting darker. One of the employees took a call, and it was from a storm spotter. They had spotted a tornado southwest of Pilger heading our way.
Okay. No, you have to stay here. Everyone, gather around.
It was too late for the employees to leave.
We don't have time to go home.
And our emergency plan calls for using the vault as the storm shelter.
I got my grandkids.
I knew that was going to be the safest place for them to be.
The safest place is in the vault. We've got to get in there now.
One of the people in the bank that day was a repairman for our bank vault company. I asked him if the door could be locked from the inside, and he indicated to me, no, it can't be locked from the inside.
Realizing someone had to stay outside the vault to lock the door, Bank President Gene Willers takes charge and delegates the staff, possibly for the last time.
And I just said, get in the vault. And they could see the look on my face. They were not going to question it. So they went in the vault.
You'll be safe. I'll be fine. I'll be fine. Everyone, stay there. Stay safe.
2 employees from the accounting office, the vault repairman, and then the employees that were there. I'm usually a fairly laid-back guy, but you get to the point you feel kind of like I don't want to say captain of the ship, but you know, for lack of a better term, somebody has to take responsibility to see that everyone's safe. I'm a family man. I've always felt that way about my family, and they were my family too.
And as captain of the ship, Gene made the heroic move to save his staff and possibly go down with his ship.
There's a wheel that you turn, but there's also, you spin the tumblers to lock it. And I didn't do that. I latched it and turned the wheel so it was tight. I was afraid if something happened to me that it would be difficult for somebody to open that door.
We're gonna die in here!
After I had latched the door, I went back to the windows, and at that point I could see 2 tornadoes southwest of town, probably 2 to 3 minutes away. I didn't stay there very long.
Gene made a quick decision based on his experience of tornadoes in the past.
I decided to go down the steps into the crawl space.
You're not dealing with just one funnel cloud. Now you're dealing with 2 separate tornadoes, and you cannot predict where a tornado is going. Maybe they're wrapping around each other. Maybe they're going in separate directions from each other. You may have to deal with the first tornado that comes and impacts your area. You may not even know that a second one is directly behind it.
Gene goes into survival mode.
So I went into the crawl space underneath the bank. At about that time, the electricity got cut. I could hear the siren going, but other than that, it was just eerily silent. I'm a man of faith, so I prayed. At this point, when I realized we're going to get a direct hit, I pretty well had decided I wasn't going to survive. My thoughts were, I hope I made the right decision with the ball. My wife, how's she going to do without me? The children, grandchildren, those type of things. I didn't have my phone, so I couldn't communicate with her. In essence, I was alone, very alone. I started just hearing kind of rumbling. The air pressure was changing, so I knew it was coming.
With speeds up to 200 miles per hour, this was going to be bad.
At that point, when I started feeling, ears popping, those type of things, I knew we were gonna get hit. It was like two freight trains hitting head on. That's how loud it was. It was very loud at that point. The floor above me was being sucked up somewhat, just bouncing, and so I knew we were getting a direct hit. It probably wasn't that long of a time, but it seemed like forever.
It took only 81 seconds for the twin tornadoes to take down the bank and the town of Pilger.
Longest 81 seconds that ever happened, I think, in my mind. There was debris on the steps. I had to clear that out to get up the steps. And I didn't realize the extent of the damage till I got up the steps.
It appears Gene is the only one that survived.
Because that floor had been pulled up somewhat, there were a lot of things laying around, desks, chairs, debris everywhere. And it looked like World War III outside of the bank.
Half the bank was now gone. But what about Gene's staff? Were they gone as well?
I had no idea what kind of condition the people were, and I couldn't hear them. And as I pulled the door open, they were all more or less huddled together in the back of the vault.
Is everyone okay? Come on, come on.
They came out, did a little hugging. Everybody it was just a flood of relief.
It's insane.
It is crazy. The only part of the bank that remained was the vault was supporting the north half of the ceiling, but that was about it. I mean, it was totally destroyed.
What remained of the bank's structure was deemed unsalvageable. Machines were brought in to tear it down completely.
We did have 2 deaths from the storm. That was tragic. You always, in the back of your mind, you wonder how you react in situations, And I think I reacted well and responsibly. And I think the community and especially my employees feel good about what I did. And I thank God for his protection. I guess this storm had quite an impact on my life. I was 1 year from retirement, and I needed to stay on longer, so I spent another extra year and a half working to replace the bank. Also, the community was about 75% destroyed. The storm itself has changed the whole makeup of the community. Typical small rural community made up of a lot of older people, rental houses. Those people all left. So the population is probably 40% lower than it was. The downtown area was totally wiped out. I was recognized by the Red Cross, and every year Iowa and Nebraska has a rivalry football game. It's called the Heroes Game. And I was recognized there along with an individual from Iowa, and which I was appreciative. People really need to take these situations seriously. It's an awful thing. It's something that you can't describe. It's something to be avoided at all costs. I think the reason that this receives so much coverage is because two tornadoes of that magnitude side by side is really rare. That was the day weather changed my life.
Tornadoes.
Here comes the tornado.
They twist. They turn. They kill. These are the stories from people who work in extreme weather.
We just lost a big window.
It was just like a bomb went off.
And nobody is coming to save you.
And the storms they'll never forget.
Wham! Crack! Bang! Bang! Bang!
We're going to die.
Plus, the how and why behind the world's worst weather.
Mother Nature is one mother.
The state of Nebraska is no stranger to tornadoes. Located within the infamous Tornado Alley, Nebraska gets 57 tornadoes per year on average.
Tornadoes are something that we've been studying for a long time. They occur in what we call tornado belts, in a sense, areas where there's a predominance of tornadoes. Well, the scientists for predicting tornado formation is that you look for the conditions in the atmosphere where it is, first of all, very warm, enough moisture, and unstable in the sense that there is vertical motion happening.
Storm chaser and tornado tour guide George Karunas has been chasing tornadoes for over 20 years.
It is impossible for me to add up the number of days, weeks, months, miles that I have traveled. It's typical for me to live like a nomad, crisscrossing the Great Plains of the United States for 4 to 6 weeks every springtime. In all of my years of storm chasing, I've seen a lot of flying debris, things being thrown through the air by tornadoes, but this was a close call.
As a tornado chasing tour guide, George Karunas gives clients an up-close and personal view of these destructive weather monsters. Each spring, he spends 2 weeks at a time chasing tornadoes, with clients along for the extreme ride.
I'm gonna jump out and get a shot of this.
Every spring, I disappear and head to Oklahoma, Kansas, Texas, Nebraska, and literally just go where the wind takes me. We have to try and forecast where the storms are going to be, and then drive to maneuver to get into position to where we think the storms are going to form. If you're lucky, a storm will go up, you chase it, you try to navigate around the roads, And if you're really, really lucky, you'll see a tornado.
May 12, 2013. It's Mother's Day. George and his clients get ready for what they hope will be an epic storm-chasing day.
Thank you. It's the early morning. We're putting our weather forecast together. We realize that there's potential for some storms later in the day. I've gathered together all the guests from the tornado tour, and I'm ready to give them a briefing. But it's Mother's Day. What do you have to do on Mother's Day? Call Mom. So I'm on the phone with my mother.
I know, Mom.
The conversation was a typical Mother's Day conversation. Hey, how you doing? Everything is good? But then she said something that was a little unusual. She said that she was particularly concerned for my safety today.
I know, Mom. It's not my first rodeo.
So I thought it was weird that she said that.
Little did George know, but his mother's instinct about Mother Nature may have been correct.
So I hang up the phone with my mom. We do our weather briefing, let everyone know what's going on for the day, and then we pile into the vans and head towards our target area, which happens to be in south central Nebraska this particular day.
Nebraska is a huge trigger for tornadoes due to its dry lines, a separation of moist and dry air. When these two fronts collide, air rises and storms develop.
Chasing tornadoes is all about gambling your knowledge versus the curveballs that Mother Nature is going to throw you. So we do a very sophisticated analysis of all the computer weather models. We look at satellite data, we look at radar data, and we develop a target area. And as the day progresses, the weather information gets better and better. So we're able to narrow our target down as the day goes on. The computer models are telling us that there is a potential for supercell thunderstorms, that is these giant rotating storms, the ones that are most likely to produce tornadoes.
When you have certain kinds of events in the atmosphere and there's, say, a cold front coming through or a warm front, you'll create, let's say, convective cells of storms here and here and here and here, what we call a supercell. It will be much more intense, more super. Unfortunately, that means more devastating, usually, than an ordinary cell.
We get people join us on these chases from all over the world. Folks from Canada, the US, all over England and Europe, people from Australia and New Zealand, weather enthusiasts, the kind of people that don't run inside when there's thunder and lightning. We have a sophisticated setup. I'm driving. We have the owner of the tour company, who is also the navigator, in the passenger seat, and then all of the guests are in the back. And we've got cameras set up that are facing back. I've got cameras on the dashboard, because we want to capture every minute of the chase. Late in the afternoon, we have a target storm that goes up in south central Nebraska, and we're able to get in front of it. And we're looking basically down the throat of this supercell, and it is a dark mass along the horizon. You can see a sharp edge, and then it's just nothing but black underneath. This is what we call an HP supercell, a high precipitation, meaning there's a lot of rain coming out of it, and that can make it extra dangerous. If there's a tornado embedded in that rain, you could be hit by it and not even see it coming. The fact that this storm was a high precipitation type really upped the danger level. So I really wanted to make sure that I gave this storm a wide berth.
As George and his guests head into the storm, the sky becomes black. It looks mean. A few miles away, they spot a tornado in the distance.
Is that the tornado there?
That is it.
Their clients in the back seat are thrilled. This is what they came for. The team decides they've got to pick up the pace to get ahead of the storm.
We were getting into a tricky situation. I was on a dirt road with this monster storm bearing down on us that is about to dump a ton of rain. It had just been issued with a tornado warning, and I couldn't tell if there was a tornado wrapped up in all that rain. I'm there to chase the storms and bring these paying customers to come and see them as well. But the #1 priority is keeping everyone safe. We see it produce a small tornado on the horizon, and it's starting to accelerate. This storm is getting closer and closer to us. And we know that the road that we're on, this dirt road, is probably going to turn into mud in a matter of minutes.
It's coming right at us right now. We're gonna need to turn around.
We turn the van around and start blasting out of there. And then things get really hairy.
Located within the infamous Tornado Alley, the state of Nebraska gets an average of 57 tornadoes per year. May 12, 2013. A full-on tornado is forming, and tornado tour guide George Karunas has just entered the supercell storm, taking his passengers along for what may be a dangerous ride.
At this point, the storm is probably moving about 40 miles an hour, so I have to really hit the gas to try and stay ahead of it because we know we're going to get engulfed by the heaviest rain and hail. Being in front or in the path of a tornado is extremely dangerous. If you see a tornado and it's not moving left and it's not moving right, it just looks like it's getting bigger, guess what? It's coming straight for you. The biggest problem with tornado chasing is the unknown. You can try and predict where this tornado is going to go, but they don't always go where you think they're going to go, and the roads don't always cooperate. One of the most dangerous part about chasing a storm that can produce a tornado is not the tornado that you can see. It's the tornado that you can't see because it's either wrapped in rain or it's forming right on top of you. And that's exactly what happened this day.
And what George couldn't see, all of a sudden reared its ugly head.
And then out the side to our south, somebody spots a tornado touching down very close to us in the field. I can't see it because I'm driving. And here's the thing about tornadoes. Tornado is a rotating column of wind, not necessarily cloud. So you could have a swirling mass of debris that doesn't look like much, but it's a tornado. That's exactly what happened on this day in Nebraska. We see to the south the tornado. I'm driving east. We know the storm is moving northeast. That puts that tornado on a perfect trajectory to intercept us. The chaser has become the chased.
Look at that. Oh man, it's coming in quick.
Do we try to outrun the tornado? Do I try to put on the brakes and let the tornado pass? You have seconds to make really important decisions, especially because you've got a van full of people who are in your hands and you're responsible.
We need to get out of here. We gotta go.
We gotta get out of here, man. Let's go.
Every minute you're making dozens of very important decisions that could be life or death.
Make sure you got your seatbelts on right now.
And at this point, all we can do is try to outrun it. My biggest concern was being rolled over by these winds. I could feel the wind pushing the side of the van, and I'm fighting it as hard as I can. Imagine driving a barn down the road. That's what it's like with one of these big vans.
But George's van isn't the only thing that these forceful winds may roll over.
And it just so happens that we're driving past an irrigation system. This is equipment that farmers use to water their crops. These irrigation pivots, they're basically a long, what looks like a piece of scaffolding with wheels that a farmer will set up in the middle of their field, and then it rotates around. If you've ever been flying over the central US and you look down out of the airplane and you see those circles for crops, that shows you where they've been using these irrigation circle equipment. One of these is parked parallel to the road, and I'm trying to get ahead of this storm now.
We just gotta move.
I'm holding the steering wheel with all of my strength.
Keep going, keep going, keep going, keep going, keep going.
I'm just bracing against the wind, flooring the gas. The tornado now starts to push this piece of farm equipment over.
Oh! You all right?
Yeah.
The end piece could have easily gone through the windshield and into any one of us. Scary stuff.
Everyone okay?
What did you hit?
For that to be blown over the way it was, I can't imagine how strong the winds were. I'm surprised the van didn't roll. The guests in the back, they were fully aware that it was a close call. When you have farm equipment starting to come through your windshield, that's a pretty good indicator that you're in the wrong place. When the dust finally settled and we were able to stop, we got out to do a damage assessment to see how bad this was. It was shocking to see how little damage there was. I was expecting the entire side of the van to be just completely destroyed and demolished. There was very little damage at all, just a broken mirror and a smashed windshield.
Close one, eh? Yeah.
I'm not proud of what happened that day. It was a clear example of being in the wrong place, and we probably should have evacuated out of there much earlier than we did. But it's hard to tell. You can do everything right and still end up in the wrong place. Everyone in that car will remember that day.
Tornadoes are very destructive because they're very intense winds over a relatively small spatial scale, but the wind speeds themselves within a tornado are really horrific, so they can literally blow a building apart.
I know, Mom.
Of course, my mother had warned me earlier in the day that she was particularly worried about my safety. Well, later that evening, that video ended up airing all over the world on the evening news. Mom got to see firsthand how right she really was. Over the years with all of my adventures, I have given my mother a lot of gray hairs. This particular day, she got a few extra. In all of my years of storm chasing, I've seen a lot of flying debris, things being thrown through the air by tornadoes, but this was a close call. It wouldn't have taken much. If I was driving maybe a little bit faster, that farm equipment would have maybe not hit the windshield, maybe come through the side window and taken out one of the paying customers. So that absolutely was the day that weather changed my life.
Tornado winds wreak havoc on everything in their paths as they pick up speed.
Can you hear it?
Almost nothing stands in their way. Potentially more destructive is the tornado's spiraling vortex as it reaches the ground. Anything can be ripped apart or thrown in the air, creating a deadly field of debris.
Tornadoes need, first of all, heat. They have to have the energy. They need moisture. And they need the right combination of the wind, what we call the wind shear. The change in wind as you go from the surface up into the atmosphere, such that it can cause that rotating force.
While most people are seeking shelter from the vortex, storm chaser Tim Baker is trying to get as close to the vortex as possible.
I don't have any noble reason why I chase tornadoes. I mean, I'd like to use my stuff to help for safety and maybe help protect lives. But the reality is, I want the adrenaline rush.
Tornado's on the ground! The tornado's on the ground!
I don't want to just see the tornado from a half a mile away. I want to touch the edge of that thing.
It's a rain-wrapped tornado!
But on this particular day, I was trapped in the path of it with no escape. When you're stuck in a tornado, you're done. I was just waiting to die.
Tim Baker, better known as Tornado Tim, has been chasing storms for over 20 years.
I like to go by the name Tornado Tim because I like chasing tornadoes. That's kind of my passion in life.
For more than 2 decades, Tornado Tim has played cat and mouse with Mother Nature.
Tornado's coming! Tornado's coming!
Outrunning the twists and turns of literally hundreds of tornadoes. But on May 13, 2009, all that came to a dead end. With a population of less than 20,000, Kirksville is a small town in the northwest of Tornado Alley. Over 2,000 tornadoes have torn through Missouri since 1950, and Kirksville and surrounding area have been hit dozens of times.
Tornadoes are something that we've been studying for a long time. They occur in what we call tornado belts, areas where there's a predominance of tornadoes.
Tim begins to check his weather maps and models.
In May of 2009, I was already in Kansas. There was just a slight chance of severe storms the day before, and nothing really happened, so I looked at the weather maps to see where the front has moved, see where the low has moved, see where the jet stream's positioned, because they never stay exactly as the predictions work. So I'm trying to figure out exactly how far north, south, east, west I need to adjust to. You've got to be fairly accurate because your first predictions are going to get you in a region where you don't want to be more than 60 miles off target. Because you've got to travel distance when the storms start to fire, and then when the tornado starts to form, you got to be pretty close or it's going to happen and be gone and you won't be there. I chase in the same areas all the time, and I know those roads like the back of my hand. But on this particular day, I was chasing in an area of Missouri I'd never been in before, and that's when things really changed. There was a lot of country, farmish type roads, a lot of turning in the roads that I wasn't familiar with. So this was very unfamiliar territory.
Although he may have been in unfamiliar territory, this did not diminish Tim's ego, as he began to play tag with Mother Nature, a game he normally wins.
Oh yeah, we've got a tornado forming right here, baby.
Today was proving an exceptional day for tornado chasing.
That first tornado that day was great because I was able to watch the tornado come at me.
Very violent tornado.
In fact, I start to see branches and debris falling on top of my car from that first tornado because I was so close.
Debris. We have debris.
I waited to the last second, and I floored it. I mean, you can hear my tires squeal from my car as I'm getting away from it. And I'm playing tag with this first one. Instead of just sitting at a distance and watching it move, I go in and I tag it. I touch the outer fields of the tornado winds. And then I punch away, get away from it, and then I wait for it to catch up to me again, and I come in and I touch the outer edge of it. And experience that and then get away from it. There's nothing like it. Seeing a tornado is one thing, but I want to experience it, and I'm experiencing that tornado. I mean, let's face it, I am Tornado Tim. So playing with a tornado is part of me. It's part of my identity.
Tim may know who he is, Unfortunately, he doesn't know where he is.
I'd never been in that area, so I didn't know what to expect. It's very windy and it's hilly. So the winding roads, the trees, was making it difficult for me to know exactly where I was in the position of the direction of the tornado. I couldn't tell sometimes if I was going north, south, east, or west. So it was making that really complicated.
The last thing anybody wants when they are in the path of a killer tornado is to not know their surroundings in order to plan an escape route.
Tornado is tailing me.
I came into Kirksville and I could see that tornado heading straight for this subdivision. The lights go out. There's power flashes. You see the tornado ripping up the power poles. So like any time you get overconfident, you start to make decisions that you probably in a normal, logical sense wouldn't make. I started to turn onto roads that I had never been on before to get directly in the path of a tornado. I can start to hear the wind scream. I realize, all right, I've got to move now. So I start to move into the subdivision. And I thought, I'm going to turn right, drop south of this tornado, and watch it go by me. So I get there, I turn right. And it's a dead end. So the first time in my life, I am trapped in the path of a tornado. And I'm watching it rip stuff apart. I was just waiting to die.
Missouri ranks as one of the top 10 states struck by tornadoes. And May 13, 2009 is no exception. Kirksville, Missouri. Tornado winds are raging at 200 miles per hour. Destruction is everywhere. And storm chaser Tornado Tim Baker is stuck on a dead-end street.
So the first time in my life, I am trapped in the path of a tornado. And I'm watching it rip stuff apart. I thought a million things. I'm thinking, I'm on a dead-end road and I will die here. How stupid was I to do this? My family's gonna have to pick up my body in Kirksville, Missouri, and they don't even know where it is on the map. All these things are just floating through your head. Tornado Tim dies by being killed by a tornado. I'm feeling stupid. And I'm watching that thing come in. I realize the debris from those houses is going to be thrown into my car.
With nowhere to go, Tim braces for the 135-mile-per-hour tornado and the debris that's flying through the air.
When you hear a warning of a tornado, don't wait for the first warning and think, well, what should I do? What you should probably have is a safe place. It could be part of your basement, something that allows you to get in a place where you're not going to be blown apart.
So I've got my camera faced right outside of the front window, and you just start to see little debris, bigger debris, starting to throw it around. And I'm looking out my window and I see this spinning column of boards and 2x4s and plywood floating coming right at me. It starts to get really close and then the debris gets larger. I see things now starting to slam into my car and then fly over it that are bigger than my car. Entire sheets of plywood, siding, nails, glass, metal, everything is slamming into my car. The car's being rocked. You can just hear the banging happening to my car. All along, I was certain I was going to be picked up, thrown into a tree, and bent around like a pretzel and killed. I was just waiting to die. I actually started uttering, God, I'm really sorry, and I'm in your hands.
I'm in your hands, brother. I'm in your hands.
The tornado was probably moving at 35 to 40 miles an hour, and the wind speeds within the tornado were probably 110 to 135 miles an hour. At that point, I pretty much said Mother Nature wins. When you're stuck in a tornado, you're helpless. You're done. Nothing you can do.
The tornado and the debris pass through. And miraculously, Tornado Tim survives.
You know, you asked me what I was thinking when I was sitting in the car and the debris pounding in the car. What goes through your mind as a tornado chaser who's highly experienced and studied severe weather and tornadoes, I'm thinking of all the ways people die in a tornado. All that's going through my mind, I know all the ways I'm potentially about to die.
Subdivision took a direct hit. Right next to me.
The sad thing is people get killed, property's destroyed, people lose a lot of their life savings. 2 people had died from that tornado. There was over a dozen injuries in the town. So it has a negative impact on the town that way, and certainly a lot of people suffer. The next storm chase season wasn't the same after that. There was something in the back of my mind that wasn't letting me get as close. In fact, it was early on the next spring, I was right spot on to get a tornado. I was going to be right on the edge of that thing. And I got to the outer bands, and there was a lot of rain, and I stopped. And I thought, I don't want to be trapped like Kirksville again. I'm less likely to turn on an unknown road if I can at least check the maps first. I still chase today and will be chasing until the day I die.
Tornado winds cause catastrophic damage. They demolish any obstacle in their path. They create spinning fields of killer debris. And sometimes they literally suck you into the eye of the storm.
The wind fields around tornadoes are a very curious beast. They are all sucking in towards the tornado, just on the edge of the updraft, which is very strong within these violent thunderstorms. There really is a sucking motion taking debris skyward. The strongest tornadoes have such force behind them, they can actually peel pavement off highways.
Veteran storm chasers and husband and wife team Jeff and Kathy Piotrowski are known for capturing some of the greatest tornado footage in their industry. This power couple's adrenaline not only drives their passion, but drives them into the eye of the storm.
I've been chasing storms for almost 40 years now. Tornadoes, to me, is an extraordinary event for Mother Nature to release its fury and watch it all go from clear skies to the most violent storm on planet It was absolutely amazing. This one day, it was the largest, biggest, widest tornado we filmed in 40 years. I knew it was something special and something different that I had never witnessed before. If it gets you and you get sucked in, you're in trouble. You're in big trouble.
Jeff and Kathy are no strangers to tornadoes. Living in Oklahoma, they are all too familiar with Tornado Alley.
Tornado Alley is in the central part of the U.S., where we have to have those perfect ingredients to come together every spring, and that is the Gulf of Mexico sends moisture northward into the Central Plains. We have a strong jet stream coming in from California as the upper winds come out of the southwest, and it brings the dry air out of the desert, out of Arizona to Mexico, and that dry air, hot air will hit the moisture, and it causes thunderstorms to erupt. And if the jet stream's aloft and we got low pressure in the Rockies, then you create a lot of wind shear in the atmosphere, and when that happens, you get the storms to rotate. Before this particular tornado, the average tornado has a certain size and a certain speed. A lot of times they move to the northeast at like 25 miles an hour, and they behave a certain way based on the conditions for that day. But on this particular day, all those rules went out the window, and it did things that we've never seen before. El Reno is just west of Oklahoma City, about 30 miles on I-40.
Yeah.
So the morning of May 31st, we were looking at the data that we knew there was a risk out, a moderate risk.
There it is, yeah. Okay.
And we knew Oklahoma City area was going to be under the gun for significant weather and tornadoes. That morning, we looked at the data, and I said, hey, we're going to go to El Reno. That's kind of going to be ground zero area of where something bad was going to happen. So we knew that. So we left Tulsa around 10 o'clock in the morning. We drive to Oklahoma City. On our way down, we're watching the radar, we're watching satellite, and there's already storms developing in southeast Kansas along the draw line in the front. And we see these things coming together and during the course of the day.
It's getting really ominous looking. The horizon's getting darker and darker. There's the brightness to the west of the dry line, and the clouds are forming from the north to the south also.
So we set up on the northwest side of El Reno, and the storms are developing about 25 miles west of El Reno. There are thunderstorms growing in air mass, kind of like you see on a spring day. You see these big, huge cumulus clouds developing. And I'm watching radar, and I'm watching the storm. And the radar image just gets better, worse by worse. Every minute it updates. Every couple minutes we get a new radar image. Then I've got hail forming.
Hail forms in storms that produce tornadoes, again, because of that correlation of wind shear and the heat and energy. The shear keeps the storm going. It propels these storms to last an hour, maybe even 2 hours. Hail needs time in the atmosphere to grow. That is why these big tornado producers often produce large hail as well. The hail is produced in the updraft portion of the storm, and it is basically buoyed aloft in this strong updraft in order to create the largest hailstorm.
I can see torrential rain, and the worst sign is the storm is already starting to show the signs. It's starting to rotate and spin, and I've got rotating curtains, which are a precursor before the tornado that the storm is rotating, so it's like a shower curtain in the bathroom. If you pull the curtain around, the rain is just following that wind, and as the storm rotates, the rain follows that rotating curtain, and so I see that on the radar. I see a hook starting to form, and at that point, I say, it's time, we're going after the storm. So it's raining, there's hail, and there's wind, and The storm's getting darker and darker, and it's looking more ominous by the second.
When we're approaching the El Reno storm, the first thing I see is a vortice, and I don't see just one, I see multiple vortices coming down. The vortices are tornadoes. They're the tornadoes that are touching the ground, but they're coming back up, and then another one will come down, and it'll go back up, and then they were just dancing around one another before they formed the main event, the main tornado. I'm knowing that it's going to be a very violent storm.
Almost half of Oklahoma tornadoes occur in May. And May 31st, 2013 will go down in history when the widest tornado ever recorded reared its ugly head in the city of El Reno. Storm chasers Jeff and Kathy Piotrowski are entering the mouth of the beast.
The storm's getting darker and darker, and it's looking more ominous by the second. Now we're heading west on I-40, west of El Reno, and the storm is severe. A severe thunderstorm warning has been issued by the Weather Service.
I knew it was going to be very dangerous, something I was going to have to be very aware of. I didn't have time to be frightened. I had to be really cognizant, very aware of what was going on so I could keep us both safe.
It's not my first rodeo. I mean, after you film about 900 of these, you get a sense of what's going to happen before it happens. But this one had a few tricks up its sleeve.
And for Jeff and Kathy, this tornado was going to use every twisted trick in the book.
Originally, when the storm developed, we were about 20 to 30 miles east of it. But then at the time the tornado was forming, it was only about a quarter mile away from the tornado. Then we went back to the east to get ready for the intercept as the tornado was approaching El Reno. First of all, the storm structure was really amazing. And also the inflow into the tornado, the storm itself, was sustained at 50, gusting to 80 miles an hour. Way in advance of the tornado itself, the inflow was like a hurricane of air rushing into the bottom of the storm. So that in itself caught my attention. Then what caught my attention even more, as the tornadic storm was moving southeast, and as Kathy said, we'd have multiple tornadoes dance around each other. And generally we have multiple tornadoes, not all the time, but sometimes they'll join into one large tornado. And I saw one concentric tornado, it slowed down, and I literally watched it go from southwest to south of me, and it stopped, and it got wider and wider and wider in front of us. And then all of a sudden, it just goes boom. It starts taking off the east. We turn east. It's out Kathy's window. She's watching the tornado. I'm watching the map. And it's a race is on now to stay in front of the tornado. And this tornado is accelerating. It's growing both in width and intensity. And it's also starts having other tornadoes start forming ahead of it, tracking, pulling back into this main tornado like a conveyor belt.
The inflow of air pulling back into the main tornado is not the only thing it's going to pull in.
The El Reno tornado was complicated in a lot of different ways. You'd like to be just ahead of the tornado. Like if the tornado's moving northeast, I like to be in front of it, driving north, and then back east, and then north and east. And that's what I did on El Reno Day. That's what kept us safe. So the key thing when staying safe and out of its path of the tornado is we saw it growing in its width and its forward speed. They moved southeast for about 3 to 4 miles. Then the tornado slowed way down. It got much larger. Tornado moved east for about 3 miles, and then it curved and it got really wide and started moving northeast. And then the last 3 or 4 miles, it was really large, and then it shot due north. So it made almost a complete U over about a 10-mile path. And when it made that hook, that hard beam to the left and accelerated, that's when it caught a lot of people off guard.
Generally, you know, large tornadoes move slowly and they're anchored in. However, with the El Reno tornado, there were multiple vortices. There wasn't just that one large tornado. There were several tornadoes going on at the same time under this one mesocyclone.
Jeff makes a life and death decision to hit the gas. But will that be enough to avoid being hit himself?
Rain curtains were rotating around and hiding the monster tornado inside. You knew something bad was back there. And I remember having the accelerator all the way to the floor, maybe doing 60, 70 miles an hour. And I could feel the front of the truck in a 100-mile headwind. I could feel the front of the truck doing this. I could literally feel it coming off the ground.
The chase vehicle gets kind of a lightness to it. You can just feel it.
The tornado is catching us!
And she said a dozen times, we're gonna get sucked into it, we're gonna get sucked into it, we're gonna get sucked into it.
Ah.
I knew Jeff was giving it all he could.
Hold on!
I was scared to death.
Oh my God, it's on us!
There was about a 5 or 10 second period of time when I looked up with the storm and I saw this huge mass coming, and the inflow was so enormous, it felt like any second the entire vehicle was going to go airborne and I was going to get shot up to outer space. So yeah, it was scary. It was really scary.
If a car gets sucked into a tornado, you're going to die.
If it gets you and you get sucked in or you get into that tornado wall of winds, you're in trouble. You're in big trouble. What I did over the next minute or two was going to determine whether we survived or we got chewed up and hit by this big tornado. It was literally down to seconds. And I understood that threat as it was happening, but I didn't like the feeling.
I just felt confident that Jeff was going to pull us out of this.
I think we need to go north.
He makes good decisions continuously when we're out storm chasing, and so I felt confident we were going to make it out.
My sensory, every piece of information 360 degrees around me tells me what the next move I need to make in order to stay alive. You question your mortality when you have this huge, big killer tornadoes that are bearing down on you, and you know horrible things are happening. So you have split seconds to make a decision, am I going to survive this?
The El Reno tornado was 2.6 miles wide. The moment that I'm looking up through the front windshield and I can see the debris going over, I'm thinking to myself, I may not get out of this one.
So as we're driving away from the El Reno tornado, the steering wheel is actually vibrating. I can feel the wheel vibrating as I'm driving. It's from the ground rumbling. So I've got the front of the truck being picked up and the wheels vibrating. So you know what's behind me is really bad. When the tornado made a hard left turn and went up to I-40, we found ourselves at the I-40 on-ramp, and we, at that point, decided to head east into Oklahoma City.
Keep going, keep going, keep going.
We drove in the city, we were dealing with flash flooding, heavy rain, high winds, but it was on a downhill hillside as far as intensity goes of the overall storm. It weakened. At that point, that was the end of that cycle of that large tornado.
I remember when the El Reno tornado dissipated, just watching this massive wedge as it went to the north, and then as it dissipated, it just looked like it disappeared.
The El Reno tornado was the second widest tornado on record. It was about 2.6 miles wide. It was just a beast beyond words. The lift associated with the updraft that generated the tornado was just incredible. So you have these sucking winds coming in from miles around and feeding this thing, and it just widens with time and becomes the most fearsome looking thing.
There were a number of people killed and injured during the El Reno tornado. Several chasers were killed, and knowing those people really hit us hard, and the community, weather community hard as well.
For me, I'll never forget the El Reno tornado because of the other storm chasers that lost their lives. It just shows me how fragile life can be, and we were really close to something major disastrous happening. And I think of how blessed we are, how fortunate we are that we didn't get caught in this major tornado.
It was a day to remember like no other day, that we barely survived. That's the weather event I will never forget.
Tornadoes. They twist. They turn. They kill. These are the stories from people who work in extreme weather.
We just lost a big window.
It was just like a bomb went off.
And nobody is coming to save you.
And the storms they'll never forget.
Wham! Crack! Bang! Bang! Bang!
We're going to die.
Plus, the how and why behind the world's worst weather.
Mother Nature is one mother.
They can come out of nowhere. They can outrun the world's fastest bullet train. And they tear up everything in their path. Tornadoes, some of the deadliest weather Mother Nature can dish out.
The path of a tornado is quite unpredictable. It tends to want to go in one general direction. However, it can deviate from that path. It's just the nature of the beast.
When most people are running away from tornadoes, Jeff and Kathy Piotrowski are racing toward them. Together, they've chased more than 1,000 tornadoes, filming the wildest weather imaginable.
I mean, we've seen it all. But this event was Mother Nature at its worst.
That's the weather event I will never forget.
May 22nd, 2011. A hot, humid day. The perfect symptoms for wild weather. Jeff and Kathy load their van with state-of-the-art weather-chasing gear. The plan? Track and film a storm they believe is gathering in nearby Kansas.
So I'm looking at radar data, satellite data, and Kathy's doing that as well. We looked at the computer models. There's another wave coming out in the plains. We have a draw line, so you got hot, dry air against warm, moist air, and those two air masses go like that and causes the storms to erupt. All the ingredients are coming together.
Oklahoma's Storm Prediction Center confirms Jeff's forecast. There's an increasing risk of tornadoes in southeast Kansas.
We were getting some rain showers, you know, lightning, thunder, that kind of thing, but things weren't looking quite right.
Jeff can tell from the direction and speed of the winds that a tornado was unlikely to take shape in Kansas. He and Kathy make the most fateful decision of their lives.
That's when we decided to drop south.
Toward Joplin, Missouri, and into the eye of the storm.
The conditions were much better for tornadoes closer to Joplin. And as we drove southeast, the storms looked better.
A tornado was formed with two important ingredients. Heat and humidity is the fuel, and wind shear is the engine that drives these storms. The winds are rapidly changing within and around the tornado.
We got out of the truck. And I looked at the sky, and the storm was rotating like a barber pole, and everything was accelerating like 10 times normal speed. It's a certain look that I've only seen one other time. The last time I saw that, we had an F5.
Tornadoes are rated on a scale from EF0 to EF5, with EF5 being the most destructive.
And so I got back in the truck. And I turned to Kathy. I said, something really bad's gonna start happening.
ominous clouds grow quickly, switching direction rapidly. Jeff knows it isn't a matter of if a tornado will hit Joplin, but when. Jeff and Kathy continue to chase the storm barreling down on Joplin. It's now developed into an EF2 tornado with wind speeds far faster than their car. Shortly after 5 p.m., forecasters issue a tornado warning. "28 outdoor sirens begin to wail in Joplin. A city of more than 50,000 people in the heart of Tornado Alley, a stretch in the American Midwest where tornadoes are a way of life.
You need to get into that shelter immediately when you hear those sirens sound.
Joplin braces for a hammer blow. But suddenly, the savage winds switch direction, disrupting the storm and reducing the danger to Joplin.
The first storm came out of southeast Kansas. Here's Joplin, and the first storm went to the north of Joplin. It missed Joplin. We had a lot of wind and hail. That storm created a boundary, kind of like a cold front, push of cooler air from the north, came down into the city of Joplin and stopped.
The worst is over. Or so they thought. A new spinning core spirals up at the southern tip of the storm.
And now all of a sudden it became a conveyor belt of extreme wind shear for that storm to tap into. That was the final ingredient coming together that created this tremendous wind shear. That storm hit that boundary and went crazy.
The initial storm veers north of Joplin, missing the town completely. But in its wake forms a second, more powerful tornado. A deadly sting in the tail.
We get to downtown Joplin. We notice that a new storm is forming back to our southwest of Joplin. And as it comes toward Joplin, it's starting to rotate. All my alarms on my software are going off, such as wind shear. I can see the winds are like pegging the needle at like 150 miles an hour. So I know something horrible is starting to happen.
The instinct that grips Jeff's gut is correct. The city of Joplin thinks the worst is over, but it's actually yet to come. May 22nd, 2011. Veteran storm chasers Jeff and Kathy Piotrowski are following a massive Category 5 tornado as it hurtles toward Joplin, Missouri, a heavily populated city deep in the heart of Tornado Alley. The city needs those sirens now more than ever. Jeff and Kathy race west. They arrive downtown and are immediately aware that something is wrong.
The sirens weren't sounding in the city.
When the earlier storm missed Joplin, local authorities, believing they dodged the speeding bullet, shut down the warning sirens.
And as I drove west, we encounter a police officer on the west side of Joplin.
Let's go, let's go, let's go!
I pulled up beside him, and I told him very quickly that a tornado was coming down. I said, you have to get the sirens going again. It's coming into the city. He picks up the radio, calls dispatch, tells them to sound the siren. The sirens start going off again for the second time.
But it was too late.
It's leveling the south side of Joplin in front of us.
The sky was the blackest I have ever seen. That told me that it was very serious, that there was going to be something just catastrophic getting ready to happen for these residents of Joplin.
By the time the second siren sounds, the tornado has already begun to pound Joplin. Jeff and Kathy try to keep ahead of the twister, but it overtakes them. They're caught in the belly of the beast.
I see this black mass in front of us. I see Kathy, it's an F5, it's leveling the city.
A tornado can do so much damage so quickly for three reasons, essentially. You have very strong winds. Secondly, it can be fairly wide, as most destructive tornadoes are, so it does more damage. It's a wider path of damage. And because it's a violent tornado, it can just basically churn and destroy everything in its path.
The snarling twister sucks up wreckage and rockets it 10,000 feet into the sky over Joplin.
It created this mile and a half wall of flying debris at well over 200 miles an hour. There's this deafening roar. Me and Kathy are screaming at each other to hear each other because it's so loud.
The Joplin tornado was absolutely deafening.
Jeff and Kathy try to remain at a safe distance from the tornado, but the debris field is so large, it quickly engulfs their vehicle. There's no place to hide.
We had lightning bolts inside the F5. It lit up the tornado from the surface up to about 3,000 feet.
We were actually in the tornado at that point. Your visual that you could see ahead of you was disappearing. So it was getting really dangerous.
It was scary. That was an awe moment. And when I saw that, I was like, oh my gosh. At one point, a piece of rock exploded the driver's side window.
It's the debris. The debris will kill you.
The glass blew in, cut my arm. There's glass over the dashboard, and it's raining inside of us.
If they stay here, they're sitting ducks. So Kathy makes a life and death decision.
I told him to back up. I said, back up, back up. I wanted him to take me seriously. We stopped for just a brief moment, but it was enough time to allow the tornado to do its trajectory where it changed course and it went directly in front of us.
For 38 harrowing minutes, the tornado terrorizes Joplin, unleashing hell across 22 miles. For Jeff and Kathy, every second was gut-wrenching.
We knew we had to abort the chase. I was already caught with glass, the window was out. At that point, we was going into search and rescue mode. I knew people needed help. I took a deep breath. I knew that I had to yell out, who needs help? Top of my lungs. And when I did, there were screams from every direction. And I didn't know where to walk first. And I just walked to the closest screaming sound I heard, which was right in front of me. It was a horrific scene. Next door, there were more people crying for help, just going from house to house, taking people out of the rubble. It went on for hours.
The Joplin tornado claimed 158 lives and injured more than 1,100 people. It was the costliest tornado in U.S. history.
Nothing's affected me more than the Joplin EF5. If you think about the 2,400 blocks that were leveled and 1,700 people injured and 100 some odd people died in a matter of minutes from one of the worst disasters in U.S. history, and to be there to film it, but also help the people of the city of Joplin, that is the most important thing to me. I'll never forget about the Joplin EF5.
The entire Joplin tornado chasing experience defined us. I know Jeff's a hero. He had the forethought to think when he saw that policeman to tell him to get the sirens going. And I've had many people tell me that that saved their life.
That was the day that weather changed my life.
The one thing meteorologists can predict about tornadoes is that they're unpredictable. In Joplin, Missouri, a deadly tornado suddenly sprang to life in the wake of another storm, cutting through the town before many residents could take cover. But even when a tornado follows its expected path, getting out of its way can be a matter of life or death. June 2009, Nebraska.
75% of tornadoes that occur in Nebraska occur between May and July. These months are the deadliest for tornadoes because that's when the fuel is the most intense. It's hot, it's humid, and that's what thunderstorm is like.
For those that make a living tracking these tornadoes, one wrong turn can mean the difference between life and death.
Big tornado.
I've been through thunderstorms. I've been through blizzards. I've been through 17 hurricanes. I've almost lost track of the type and number of weather events I've been through.
But only once has Mark been truly afraid while chasing a storm.
This was the first one I got really up close and personal with. I had to get out of the way of this tornado before it caught me. June 17th, 2009 started off like any other storm chase day. My buddies and I were checking the computer models, checking the radar. And what we saw was the potential for some tornado production up in Nebraska. And so we took off after the storms.
But on the way to their tornado target zone, a sudden change in weather takes Mark by surprise.
I was taking a look at my radar on the internet in the car, and two storms had popped up just to my west. So now I had a decision to make. Do I continue on to my original target zone where the parameters look great for tornadoes, or do I stop and go after these two storms, which also had good parameters and could potentially produce tornadoes? So I pulled the car over to the side of the road. I jumped out of the car, and I got a good look at the bottom of these storms. The one that was closest to me had a shape to it, had a real circular shape, so I could tell that it was really beginning to spin. So this was now a supercell. This storm had the potential to produce a tornado, and I just had to be in the right position to document it.
Just 1 in 1,000 thunderstorms spins into a supercell. A violent storm with a rising vortex of rotating air known as a mesocyclone. 1 in 5 supercells spawns a tornado, and nature's deadliest twisters spiral out of these savage storms.
My storm chaser buddies and I are 2 different cars. I'd had a bit of a frustrating time with my car because it kept overheating, so I had to be a little slower. No, 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 no.
Mark tries to coax his car back on the road. His fellow storm chasers unaware of his predicament.
As we're chasing these storms, the guys got ahead of me, way ahead of me, and I could barely even get them on the radio.
You go on ahead, I'll catch up with you, all right?
Well, the storm decided it was going to accelerate. So it's going faster, and I'm just barely keeping up ahead of it. I'm looking, directly into what we call the mesocyclone, so the center of where the spin of the storm was.
As the storm grows before his eyes, a roadblock forces Mark to drive south, directly into the path of the storm.
I've got 2 options. Either I try to go south and I try to get away from the storm before it overtakes me, or I go east and try to get ahead of the storm and get a bit more of a cushion. And the only problem is that all of my east road options are dirt, and I do not want to be driving fast on one of those dirt roads. If you hit any area along that dirt road that's gotten wet, now you're into mud. Now you have to go even slower, or you lose control and you're into the ditch, and now you're in serious trouble. And so I had the sort of choice of 2 really bad options. Go south and likely get hit by that incredibly dangerous part of the storm that might have a tornado in it, or go east along the dirt road and take the chance that I'm not gonna run into mud and that I can go fast enough on this dirt road to keep ahead of the storm. The decision I had to make was, bad or bad. So I decided, you know what, I've gotta go east, I gotta get away from this storm, so I had a chance.
But Mark's gamble doesn't pay off. Heavy rains have turned his escape route into mud.
I lasted about 4.5 seconds before my car just went into the ditch, and that was it. I'm done. I don't know where my friends are. I'm stuck on some road in the middle of nowhere. I didn't know what I was gonna do.
At any second, the supercell could spin into a killer tornado.
If it moves in an unexpected direction, you're in serious trouble.
Mark tries to escape from the muck, but it's no use. He's trapped.
And ahead I saw a barn.
As the storm continues to accelerate, Mark races towards the farmhouse and help.
The farmer and his wife greet me, and the guy says, I got my tractor, and I've got some chains. I'll pull you out. He hooks the car up, and that tractor just goes, and just pulls the car out as if there was no weight to the car at all.
But getting stuck in the mud was nothing compared to what Mark would get stuck in next.
I'm just like, okay, I'm gonna get stuck in the core of this storm. And inside the core is the potential for hail the size of baseballs. I'm hearing wham, crack, bang, bang, bang as this gigantic hail is hitting the car.
Storm chaser Mark Robinson is trapped in the core of a massive supercell thunderstorm as hail the size of baseballs pound his car. Finally, the crushing hailstorm blows over.
I give my friends a call. Turns out my two chaser buddies are in the town next to me.
Mark thinks his storm chase day is over, but in Tornado Alley, weather can change in a heartbeat.
So I hook up with the guys. We're in the parking lot, at the far end, and I look down at the radar, and we watch this storm pop up right in our target zone, and it's the best looking storm that we've seen. I thought, I've got a shot, I've got a chance to salvage this day. And suddenly, I see this weird little shape appear under the storm. I grab my buddy and I say, "Is that what I think it is?" And he looks over, sees it, and goes, "Whoa!" What we're seeing is a tornado being born at the other end of the parking lot. At this point, we're almost directly under the most dangerous part of the storm. This is the first time I've been that close to a tornado. And this is also the first time I've ever been in the path of a tornado.
In a split second, the chaser becomes the chased.
Now. Back into the car I go. Down that road I tear.
They take off with the tornado snapping at their heels. Mark quickly checks his GPS and can barely believe his eyes. If he's going to escape the tornado, he needs to get off this road, but there's nowhere to turn.
From a storm chaser's perspective, this is completely the worst case scenario because now I'm in the danger area.
Mark is now playing a dangerous game of cat and mouse with the racing tornado.
Looking in the rearview mirror, and I can see this tornado beginning to pull trees and bushes out of the ground, probably about half a mile at this point behind me. I'm watching this thing and realizing that it is a massive tornado. This thing had to be quarter mile, half mile wide.
The tornado surges forward and heads straight for Mark.
This thing is coming directly at me. For the whole day, all I'd wanted to do is see a tornado. And now that I had a tornado, the last thing I wanted to see was the tornado. This thing was relentless. It was quite literally chasing me down the road, and I could not get away from it.
With his car in danger of overheating, Mark drives as fast as he can, but can barely stay ahead of the speeding tornado.
All I can think of is, can I get away from this, or am I going to not come home to see my little ones?
At last, he's able to get far enough ahead to escape the trajectory of the rampaging tornado.
And I just watched it in my rearview mirror cross over the road right where I was.
Luckily, the tornado categorized as an EF3 skips past the nearby town. Miraculously, no one is injured. But for Mark, This tornado encounter was too close for comfort.
I've usually got a pretty good idea of what these tornadoes are going to do, but once in a while, Mother Nature is going to throw you a curveball. I've seen over 50 tornadoes in my life, but this is one I'll never forget.
Tornadoes remain deadly and often unpredictable, despite the efforts of scientists to understand the nature of the beast. The Joplin tornado took the city by surprise with its deadly second wind. The tornado was relentless as it surged toward fleeing chasers. Sometimes tornadoes hide in plain sight. They can hit before you even see them coming. May 31st, 2013. A massive tornado touches down in El Reno, Oklahoma, 30 miles west of Oklahoma City. It's a monster. Huge. Fast. And unpredictable.
80% of the time, a tornado's path or trajectory is predictable. It's the other 20% of cases that there can be an aberration in the tornadic path, and that's the unfortunate tragedy with El Reno.
The El Reno tornado is so unpredictable, it catches even the most experienced storm chasers in a deadly line of fire.
I think it's safe to say I'm addicted to weather 24/7. In my job, in my personal life, I'm always glued to radar, satellite, models. I've been out there, I've seen what the power of tornadoes can do.
There is a large tornado right behind us here. If you can see where that little white is, that is likely the edge of the tornado.
This day changed everything that I thought I knew about tornadoes. This day will be one that I will never forget.
The day the El Reno tornado struck, Jacqueline and her colleagues were on a 3-week assignment chasing storms in the American Midwest's notorious Tornado Alley.
May 31st, 2013 happened to be our final chase day on our trip. Our main objective out there is to photograph and video the storm. We send that footage back to the Weather Network all the time because it helps us show our viewers what it's like to actually see that in the field. When it comes to looking at forecast data, we are literally glued to our phones, our laptops, all the time. Weather is always changing. It's a chaotic kind of science. So what happens now affects what happens 10 minutes from now. The forecast brought us to El Reno, Oklahoma.
On this particular day in El Reno, the calm before the storm did not last long.
Every type of ingredient for storm development was not only present, it was off the charts. Winds at the surface are coming from this direction, winds a little bit higher are coming from this direction, and then winds really high in the atmosphere are the other way. Well, that induces spin. The National Weather Service put out a particular dangerous situation watch.
Residents should prepare their storm shelters for a worst-case scenario.
When you hear that, you know that they mean business. It was scary. A lot of my fellow chasers were literally fearful of chasing that day. We all had this yucky feeling in our stomach that this would not end well.
At 5:35 p.m., sirens wail in the town of El Reno. An official tornado warning is in effect.
A tornado warning gives some key information to people. It tells you where the storm is, its motion, and ideally will tell you the towns and even timing of when the tornado is expected to hit.
The average amount of time between a tornado warning and the arrival of a storm is just 13 minutes. Despite their gut feeling, the chasers head out to film the storm.
When the driving starts, then it becomes about staying in touch with your friends that are also chasing the same storm cells.
George, you copy? How you doing back there?
I'm grabbing the radio. Hey, do you have a visual on this? It's rain wrapped, we can't see anything. So it's helpful to have other eyes on the ground. I'm looking to the west and I see what looks like almost a spaceship. It's got this beautiful formation to it, and I'm just thinking it's rain.
Then Jacqueline gets an update from one of her storm-chasing colleagues.
I remember George Karunis radioing us and saying, guys, tornado, I see a tornado.
It's rain wrapped!
Suddenly, Jacqueline draws a chilling conclusion.
Oh my God, that's not rain. That is the tornado. That is a massive wedge tornado moving toward our direction.
They quickly jump out to film the epic tornado. It's already 2 miles at its base, 10 times the width of an average tornado.
A tornado can become so wide simply because it's the energy and fuel associated with these storms. The fuel was off the charts with the El Reno tornado. It was able to tap the intense moisture and heat and fuel required to generate this massive tornado within this parent thunderstorm. So you have these sucking winds coming in from miles around and feeding this thing, and it just widens with time and becomes the most fearsome looking thing.
A wedge is as wide as it is tall. And those are kind of the tornadoes that you hope to get because they're just massive and they're beautiful to photograph. This wasn't beautiful. This was terrifying. This was a wedge that went down in history as the biggest ever. And there is nothing beautiful, there is nothing fascinating about it anymore. It's really run for your life.
They expect the storm to move northeast, the typical direction for tornadoes. But the massive wedge lunges south, catching the chasers off guard.
The nature of the winds at low levels that feed a tornado, they're undulating and changing, and it just changes the path, potentially in a significant way that can impact you.
It's getting really, really big out here. All storm chasers, you copy?
Jacqueline puts a warning call out to her colleagues.
This is Jacqueline. Look, you have to get out of here now. I repeat, get out now. Do you copy?
Nothing.
Radio silence. The leading edge of the tornado closes in on them.
I've never seen anything that big. And I have this horrible feeling that I'm not gonna get out. I'm not gonna make it out of here.
A 2-mile-wide tornado barrels down on meteorologist Jacqueline Whittle and her storm tracking team. The tornado was hidden from view behind a rain curtain and catches the storm chasers by surprise.
We didn't know at first what we were looking at. It looked like a big wall of rain. So there was no reason to panic until there was.
It's a rain-wrapped tornado!
We hit the gas pedal.
Come on, go, 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 go!
Everybody just realized, holy that's the tornado. That is the actual tornado. We gotta go.
Come on, let's get out of here.
And everybody tried to beeline down Highway 81 at the same time.
Let's go!
Come on!
The tornado continues to grow. It's now 2.5 miles wide, wider than Manhattan, and speeding along at 40 miles an hour. It closes in on them.
Move!
but there's nowhere to go.
So now we have hundreds of locals actually trying to get out of the way, and you've got hundreds of chasers. You can't go anywhere. It's a traffic jam. It's the worst case scenario that you could ever imagine when trying to flee a tornado.
Oh.
The tornado was coming closer, and I can remember it sucking in the air around us. Literally, debris is blowing as the tornado's sucking it up, and that's a bad sign. We're now dead stop. Nobody's going anywhere. It actually just sat like that for several minutes, which seemed like forever to me, because I'm just looking back. We gotta go, there's nowhere to go. And I can see this dark cloud getting closer and closer. I'm thinking at this point, that's it, we're done. We're going to die.
The tornado continues to grow in size and ferocity with the winds upward of 250 miles per hour.
With 250 mile per hour winds, you can level a house. You can lift cars. Railway cars can be blown over, and it's just a whole level of severity that's almost unheard of on Earth.
The tornado continues to drop south directly behind the storm chasers. They're too close.
We got to get off this road. And we're not moving very fast.
Jacqueline has a life and death decision to make. Continue south and try to outrun the tornado, or try to escape in another direction.
If we turn too quickly, we might still be in the path of the tornado. I want to get off this highway because I'm terrified that this storm is going to cross the highway.
They come to a crossroads. Left or right. They have seconds to decide. The pathway of the tornado is anyone's guess.
So we finally get to that crucial left-hand turn.
Jacqueline, where are we going?
Left, go left!
And we actually head east.
It's the right decision.
We know now that we're out of the path of the tornado. We see it now north of us. I remember just feeling a sigh of relief that we made it. But I also knew that probably some didn't. And that was an awful feeling.
At a roadside diner, news of the tornado trickles in.
We have breaking news out of El Reno, Oklahoma tonight. Residents there are reeling after a devastating tornado ripped through the town.
Several vehicles have been caught in the storm's erratic trajectory. But not everyone made it out of the El Reno tornado alive.
Everybody at one point had to make a choice whether they're going to stay, go north, go south, or turn off on one of these small country roads. And a few of our colleagues turned a little too early. And unfortunately, the outer bands of the tornado killed 3 chasers that day.
The tornado killed 8 people, including 4 storm chasers.
And these were amazing scientists.
Another 151 people suffered injuries.
They were there studying, and they had done it for years, and that storm was different. That storm acted in a way that no other tornado acted historically. It sped up, it got bigger, it crossed the highway, it changed directions. It did everything that a tornado normally wouldn't do. And that could have been us.
The scientists killed at El Reno were collecting data to better understand tornadoes and ultimately save lives, even though it meant putting themselves at risk. The El Reno tornado claimed 8 lives and injured more than 150 people. 2.6 miles across, it was the widest tornado in recorded history. Unique in its size, ferocity, and trajectory.
We were just at the right place at the right time. But if we were literally half a mile north on that road, I wouldn't be talking right now.
At what point does a tornado become dangerous? We have dangerous tornadoes that generally have winds of, say, 200 kilometers per hour. There was a professor from Chicago, Dr. Fujita, that came up with the Fujita scale many, many moons ago. And it's correlated what we know engineering-wise about how structures are built in relation to wind strength. And it does a rough correlation between wind intensity and damage. If you have a strong and violent tornado, you're basically correlating the strongest wind speeds with the most violent damage with homes or structures. There's been a lot of research on this as well. There's the Three Little Pigs project out of the University of Western Ontario. And Dr. Greg Kopp and so on and his affiliates have a giant wind tunnel there that propel wind against objects. And they will impale 2x4s or struts or whatever, trusses through brick walls and so on, and it really helps us with the science of building safety up and against tornadoes. The funny thing about the Fujita scale, or enhanced Fujita scale, is the tornado really has to have targets to hit in order to classify it. You really could have the most intense tornado in the history of mankind out in the middle of a field, churning away, and it's not doing anything except a little bit of damage to the corn stalks. But we can't rate it as an EF5 because there's no other damage indicated.